Chapter 2761. Ning Su stares blankly, fly to the floating island. Who's forcibly tearing the barrier to go to the floating island? He mutters to himself for a while, then turns his gaze to the man on the ground. This demon's accomplice hasn't been completely slaughtered yet. After he's done here, he'll go to the northern continent to see who's so bold as to forcibly tear open the space-time gate to the floating island. As the sun sets, the entire snowy forest is dyed with a beautiful golden red. Suddenly, a door of light appears in the originally tranquil forest. The surrounding air gently ripples like water. Soon, 7 silhouettes enter the light door in a single file. Wow, we came in just like that. Luo Yu looks at the scene in the snowy forest and giggles. There's nothing strange about this mysterious Horton tribe. Yun Ruhan knocks him on the head with a straight face. Don't be so mischievous. There's obviously the aura of a powerful vicious beast in this snowy forest. Everyone be on high alert, do you hear me? Luo Yu bitterly touches his aching forehead and says gloomily, eldest brother, you're biased. Why do you only lecture me every time? Yun Ruhan glares at him and is about to speak when his face suddenly changes and his whole body violently shakes. After Luo Yu is done complaining, he happily follows Mayan to study the rare spirit plants in the snowy forest. This is a blood python flower, it's priceless outside. I didn't expect there to be so many of them in the snowy forest. Mayan looks at the bright red flowers that are only the size of a fingernail, overjoyed. Priceless. Leng Yuma swallows her saliva. Does that mean they can be sold for a good price? Mayan smiles. Not only can they be sold for a good price, they can also be used to refine several rare elixirs. Luo Yu excitedly waves his hand. Then what are we waiting for? Brothers and sisters, how do we pick them? The snowy forest is filled with laughter and cheerful voices. The blood python flowers on the ground soon disappear without a trace under their robbery-like plucking, leaving only a barren land. Luo Yu excitedly says, Sixth sister, quickly see if there's any valuable spirit grass or spirit fruit here. Let's take advantage of the fact that it's not dark yet and pick more. Before he can finish speaking, there's a sudden thud behind him. Everyone turns to look and see that Yun Ruhan has fallen to the ground. They don't know when, but her face is flushed and her eyes are closed. Eldest senior brother. The blood python flower in Luo Yu's hands fell to the ground. She threw herself at him. Eldest senior brother, what's wrong? Don't scare me. Mayan's figure leaps and arrives in front of the two. Shao Qi, step aside, let me take a look first. Luo Yu hurriedly dodged, but her eyes were fixed on the unconscious Yun Ruhan. The worry in her eyes was overflowing. Sixth senior sister, what happened to eldest senior brother? Mu Yan took his pulse for a full quarter of an hour, her brows knitting tighter and tighter. The people of the Xiaoyao sect gathered around her. Their faces were filled with anxiety, but no one said anything to interrupt her. It wasn't until Mayan withdrew her hand that Luo Yu anxiously asked in a sobbing voice, Sixth sister, eldest brother, what happened to eldest brother? Mu Yan didn't reply to Luo Yu's words. Instead, she reached out and grabbed Yun Ruhan's clothes, giving it a tug. Seeing the wound on Yun Ruhan's chest, the people of the Xiaoyao sect all gasped. At the location of the heart, there was a dense mass of reddish-brown bugs crawling. What is this? Luo Yu screamed and reached out to grab those bugs. Did they make eldest senior brother unconscious? Chapter 2762. When he says this, Luo Yu grits his teeth. He grabs hundreds of small bugs and crushes them into powder. Leng Yuma and the rest quickly do the same. These bugs don't seem to be aggressive. In just a moment, they are completely crushed by Luo Yu and the rest. However, Yun Ruhan is still unconscious with a flushed face. There's no sign of him waking up. It likes to stick to people's wounds and devour rotten flesh, especially fresh corpses. But in fact, this kind of bug doesn't have any spiritual power or demon power. Even if it crawls on a mortal's body, it would at most make their skin itch. For cultivators with spiritual power and a strong body, it should be harmless. Mu Yan explains the origin of this bug in a low voice. She can't understand it even after much thought. When she felt Yun Ruhan's pulse just now, she didn't find anything wrong with his body. He wasn't poisoned, injured, or possessed by the devil. There's only a slight blockage in his heart meridian, and it seems to be mixed with a trace of evil energy. Maybe this is the reason why Yun Ruhan is unconscious. But when and where did Yun Ruhan get this evil energy? Is it because of these rotten ticks? But rotten ticks are not aggressive. Luo Yu and the rest could easily crush them to death just now, which proves this fact. Little junior sister, if it wasn't caused by these rotten ticks, why would eldest senior brother be unconscious? Luo Yu looks at Yun Ruhan's chest heaving up and down. His face is burning with pain, and his eyes turn red. He grabs Mu Yan's hand and looks up at her with pleading eyes. Sixth senior sister, you think of a way to save eldest senior brother. I don't want eldest senior brother to die. Mu Yan reaches out and rubs his head. What nonsense are you saying? How can I let eldest senior brother die? She frowns and barely calms her mind. You guys stay here and guard eldest senior brother. I'll go look around. Look for what? Ling Yuxing quickly says, little junior sister, I'll help you look. I'll go too. Mu Yan shakes her head. I don't know what it is exactly. But everything in the world has its counterpart, and there must be a counter. Eldest senior brother might have been poisoned, but I've never seen this poison before, so I can't diagnose it. Since it's poison, there must be something within 100 meters that counters it. Looking at everyone's worried and expectant eyes, she smiled gently. Are you still worried about my safety? Don't worry, I will definitely find a solution. You guys stay here and guard eldest senior brother. After all, this is someone else's territory. You must be careful. Mayan holds a few rotten ticks in her hand as she walks towards the depths of the snow demon forest. She had a feeling that eldest senior brother's coma had something to do with these rotten ticks. Skill activated. Mu Yan releases the rotten ticks in her hand and finds that they are quickly crawling in one direction. The sky is already dark, so Mayan can only use the illumination crystal to explore the way. Soon, the rotten ticks stopped in front of a depression and circled around on the spot. Mu Yan looked around and didn't find any unique spirit plants. She takes a deep breath, and the Tian Mo Chin appears in her palm. The zither strings were plucked, and the sound of the zither was melodious and lingering. Activate. Soon, the surrounding spirit plants began to shake their branches and leaves in a frenzy. Bright moonlight sprinkles down on the jungle, and along with the music, it seems to transform into the essence of the moon, and is absorbed by these plants. Chapter 2763. The whole jungle is immersed in joy and longing. At the same time, countless information is fed back into Mu Yan's mind along with the sound of the zither. After a long time, the sound of the zither gradually stops. Mu Yan suddenly opens her eyes, leaps, and arrives in front of a big tree. This big tree is very inconspicuous in the dense snow demon jungle. The branches and leaves are sparse, there are no flowers or fruits, and the roots are densely crawling with many small insects. Mu Yan looks at the tree, and the corners of her mouth can't help but gently curve up. An hour later, Mu Yan returns to her original place with the big tree that has already been stuffed into her space. However, the scene in front of her makes the smile on her face suddenly vanish. They're gone. The fellow apprentices who should have been waiting here have all disappeared without a trace. There are a few traces of fighting in the surroundings. There are even traces of dragging on the ground, extending all the way to the north. Mu Yan's face darkens little by little. She starts again, but the strange thing is that the spiritual plants in this area are like inanimate objects. No matter how she plays the Tian and Mo Chin, she doesn't get the slightest response. The worry, anxiety, and regret in Mu Yan's heart converge little by little. Qi Huang, alright, didn't you light their life lanterns in the book pagoda? Right now, their life lanterns are all lit up, what are you worried about? Mu Yan abruptly comes back to her senses, and promptly goes to look at the life lanterns in the book pagoda. There are a total of 9 life lanterns here. In addition to Yun Ruhan's group of 6, there are also Xiao Bao's and Shi Qing's. Mu Yan originally wanted to light little martial uncle Luo Yunxiao's, but she finds that he is the same as Di Mingju, his cultivation is too high, and he can't condense a life lantern in the Shuzhen continent. Seeing that the 8 life lanterns in the book pagoda are all lit up, Mu Yan is relieved. Then, the worry in her heart turns into icy anger. I don't care what kind of ghost place this Horton tribe Mu Le Pavilion is, if you dare to hurt my fellow apprentices, then don't blame me for being ruthless. At dawn, Mu Yan follows the traces left behind, and finally walks out of the snow demon jungle. But all the traces completely disappear after reaching the outside of the jungle. She is at her wit's end, when suddenly a cold light flashes. A long sword mixed with a fierce killing intent attacks her. Mu Yan casually moved sideways to block. The 7 absolute swords appeared in her palm and she blocked it horizontally. A clang was heard. The sword-wielding figure let out a delicate cry and retreated a few meters, almost falling to the ground. This person steadied himself and was about to attack again. But when he raises his head and sees Mayan's face, he abruptly stops moving and exclaims, "Great God Jun." Mu Yan turns to look. The sword wielder was a very young girl with fair skin and a beautiful appearance. He looked familiar, but she couldn't remember where she had seen him before. The little girl recovered from her shock, and rushed over excitedly. Her small face was brimming with smiles. God Jun, it's really you. I can't believe I actually met you here. I shouldn't have attacked you just now. Great God Jun, don't be angry with me. I'm really happy to see you again. Mayan hesitantly asks after a long while, you are? The little girl didn't get angry even though she hadn't been recognized. Instead, she smiled sweetly and sincerely. Great God Jun, my name is Lin Xiaomin. You've saved so many people, and I'm only one of them. It's normal that you don't remember me. But to me, you're my second parent. Chapter 2764. A thought flashes through Mayan's mind, and she blurts out, "You are Fusang Cities." Lin Xiaomin's eyes revealed a trace of fear and pain, but it was quickly replaced by a bright and beautiful smile. She looks at Mayan with eyes brimming with gratitude and reverence. 3 years ago, I was playful and secretly left the Horton tribe, wanting to see the world in the Shuzhen continent. Who knew that? I was tricked into entering Fusang City. I thought that I would be tortured to death in that hellish Fusang City, but Great God Jun, you descended from the sky like a god, and rescued me from that nightmare. Lin Xiaomin's face revealed a trace of guilt as she spoke. I know that what we owe you is not something that can be repaid with just a word of thanks. Many sisters chose to follow you in order to repay your kindness, but I was so selfish, because I couldn't bear to leave my parents and brother. I was afraid that after 3 years, they would still be looking for me and worried about me, so I chose to return to the Horton tribe. The smile on Mu Yan's face becomes gentle and soft. You don't have to feel sorry. I did all that for myself, not to save you. You don't owe me anything. As for you, how have you been after returning here? Lin Xiaomin immediately shook her head heavily. The smile on her face was silly, but there was an indescribable warmth in it. My parents and my younger brother are very good to me. As long as she thought of the hardships and dangers she had gone through when she returned home, her parents and younger brother rushed over to hug her and cry. Lin Xiaomin felt that no matter what kind of hellish torture he had experienced, he could tolerate it and get over it. Because she still had such a good family waiting for her, watching over her, loving her. She lived her life for the people who loved her. She would never allow it to be destroyed by a group of animals. Lin Xiaomin stroked her hair and said softly, "When I first came home, I always woke up from nightmares. I didn't dare to see the sun, and I didn't dare to let any man near me, even my father and brother. Later, under my parents' persistent questioning, I finally told them what I had experienced in the past 3 years. But my father, my mother, and my younger brother didn't scold me or despise me. Instead, they hugged me and cried for the entire night. My father said that if I hate men, I can just stay unmarried for the rest of my life. My mother told me not to tell anyone about what happened in the past 3 years. My younger brother said that he has to quickly become stronger so that he can protect me, his elder sister." Tears fall from Lin Xiaomin's eyes. She looks at Mayan with tearful eyes. She can't help but reach out and grab her sleeve. She says in a hoarse voice, "Great God June, I'm really grateful to you for giving me the opportunity to go home. You have no idea how grateful I am to you." Mayan reaches out to wipe away the tears on her face, and her heart warms. She was not a good person in the purest sense, and she disdained to be the Virgin Mary who saved the world. But at this moment, he saw that his subsequent rescue had given a kind and beautiful girl a new life. That kind of surging satisfaction and peace of mind was absolutely incomparable to pure slaughter and venting. "By the way, God June, why have you come to the Horton tribe?" Lin Xiaomin wiped away her tears and regained her radiant smile. Her round little face looked particularly adorable. "June Amos, yeah, why have you come to the Horton tribe? This place has always been isolated from the rest of the world, and I rarely see outsiders throughout the year. Did you come to Mula Pavilion to seek treatment?" Chapter 2765. When Mu Yan was treating the female cultivators in Fusang City, many of them were still in a coma and didn't know that Mu Yan had treated them. When they woke up and found that their injuries were healed, they thought that Mu Yan had fed them expensive elixirs. Their hearts were filled with gratitude towards the Xiaoyao school. But the ones who truly understood the truth were Zhu Wan, Elan, and the other female cultivators who chose to follow Mu Yan. Lin Xiaomin thought of something and her face showed a trace of worry. These years, both inside and outside the tribe, there have been more and more people seeking medical help from Mula Pavilion. But it's as difficult as ascending to heaven to get help from the saintesses of Mula Pavilion. God June, you saintess. Mu Yan thought for a moment and shook her head. "I'm not here to seek medical help. Do you know the nearest place to inquire about information?" "Inquire about information. That's for sure." Lin Xiaomin quickly said, "God June, are you looking for someone or something?" "I know where the Wangyi market is, I'll take you there." Mu Yan smiled, "Thank you." Lin Xiaomin's face suddenly turned red and she kept twisting her clothes. She looked up and peeked at Mu Yan. "God June, how can you say thank you to me? I can't even repay what I owe you." God June looks so good when he smiles. And he looks younger than her, but he's already so powerful. Mu Yan, what about you? Why are you outside the snow forest? And as soon as he saw her, he launched a fierce attack. Lin Xiaomin's face turned even redder. She was at a loss as to what to do. "I'm sorry, great God June. I thought that you were here to rob people on this road. I wanted to come to the Snow Demon Forest to collect some valuable spirit herbs as payment for my brother's medical fees." Mu Yan understood the ins and outs of the matter from Lin Xiaomin's narration. It turned out that Lin Xiaomin's brother had been talented since childhood, but he got a strange disease 6 months ago. His originally tough and wide meridians gradually began to wither, so that his cultivation stagnated. In the Horton tribe, there were many people who got this disease. Some people recovered after seeking medical help from Mu Le Pavilion, while others gradually improved after taking elixirs. But there were also some people who were not lucky enough to be treated by Mu Le Pavilion. After the medicine failed, their meridians gradually withered and became damaged, until they became disabled and even died. Lin Xiaomin's brother Lin Xiaozong was only slightly ill. Although his cultivation could not advance, his life was not in danger. However, a month after Lin Xiaomin's return, Lin Xiaozong's condition suddenly worsened. All the meridians in his body rapidly aged and withered. 3 days ago, a talented young man who had already reached the peak of Jindan stage could only lie in bed, unable to even walk. Lin Xiaomin's entire family was burning with anxiety. Coincidentally, the holy nuns of Mu Le Pavilion were going to treat the commoners of the tribe for free. The saintesses of Cleansing Le Pavilion said that it's a free medical consultation and they won't charge any fees. But in reality, if one wanted to obtain a spot to be treated, they could only buy it by bribing the saintess subordinates. The more skilled the sage nun is, the greater the price she has to pay to obtain a spot. Lin Xiaomin sighed softly. In order to treat my younger brother, our family sold everything of value, but it was still too little. That's why I wanted to try my luck in Snow Charm Jungle. There were frightening beasts in the Snow Phantom Forest, and there were often gangsters roaming outside the forest, robbing and robbing. Chapter 2766. Lin Xiaomin specially came over early in the morning and searched for the most remote place. With great difficulty, he found a fairly valuable one. Just as he was about to go back with trepidation, he suddenly noticed Mayan coming out of the forest and overreacted. Lin Xiaomin, Great God Jun, Wangyin Bazaar is about to open. There's a place in the bazaar that sells all kinds of information. In fact, the Horton tribe is a bit xenophobic, and the rules are relatively strict. If outside cultivators casually inquire about it, they may be expelled. Lin Xiaomin carefully glanced at Mu Yan before continuing, but the Listening Sound Pavilion is different. The Listening Sound Pavilion belongs to the Ning family of the northern continent. Whether it's the Horton tribe or Mu Le Pavilion, they have no right to intervene. In the Listening Sound Pavilion, as long as you can pay enough crystals, you can inquire about any information, and it won't be reported to Mu Le Pavilion. Listening Sound Pavilion. The Ning family's strength. Mu Yan slightly narrowed her eyes. Okay, then I'll trouble you to take me to Wangyin Bazaar. Wangyin Bazaar is called a bazaar, but in fact, it's more like a city. Today is Wangyin Bazaar, so there will be a lot of people. Great God Jun, it's just up ahead, please come with me. Mu Yan followed Lin Xiaomin's directions and curiously observed the cultivators of the Horton tribe. The people here, whether it's their clothing or their customs, are indeed very different from the other 3 continents of the Ziyun realm. The most striking difference is the musical instruments they are wearing. Whether they are wearing simple and crude clothes or gorgeous and exquisite clothes, almost 80% of the cultivators in this bazaar are wearing a musical instrument. Moreover, these musical instruments were not just ordinary playthings, but were meticulously refined spirit artifacts and magic treasures. It seems that the northern continent of the Ziyun realm is full of cultivators who love music. Lin Xiaomin pulled Mu Yan and quickly stood in front of a private room. The plaque on the main door reads in bold and vigorous calligraphy, Listening Sound Pavilion. Mu Yan didn't let Lin Xiaomin accompany her again, but walked into the pavilion alone. As soon as she entered the main door, the sound of decadent music hit her. A young man wearing a black robe embroidered with gold immediately greeted her. Welcome to my Listening Sound Pavilion. What kind of information would you like to purchase? Mu Yan looked around and found that there were fewer people than she had imagined. Moreover, everyone's expression was respectful and cautious. The young man in the pavilion clearly looked like he was still wet behind the ears, but these cultivators, as guests, didn't dare to show the slightest arrogance. It seemed like the power behind the listening sound pavilion was not small. Mu Yan thought in her heart, but her face was still indifferent. She casually tossed it in the direction of the manservant. The manservant casually caught it, but when he saw what it was in his hand, his expression immediately changed. Obsidian crystal. The value of a piece of obsidian crystal was equivalent to a few thousand high-grade crystal stones. Not to mention, if obsidian crystals were to be added into the forging of many magical equipment, the strength of the magical equipment could be increased by several times. The most important thing was that obsidian crystals were priceless. Even if you wanted to exchange 10,000 high-grade crystal stones, you might not be able to exchange for it. The formal smile on the manservant's face immediately turned into a warm and ingratiating one. "Esteemed guest, please come to the private room on the second floor. I will let the shopkeeper entertain you. Don't worry, no matter what kind of information you want, my listening pavilion will definitely gather it for you." Chapter 2767. Mu Yan directly throws out the obsidian crystal that little martial uncle gave her. This is the effect she wants. The door to the private room is pushed open, and a middle-aged man with a gentle and refined appearance walks in, chuckling, "Spending 10,000 crystals to inquire about information in my listening sound pavilion. I haven't met such a generous guest in years." When the man's eyes meet Mu Yan's, his pupils suddenly shrink, revealing a shocked and incredulous expression. You are..." Mu Yan raises her eyebrows. "What? You know me?" Hearing the girl's clear and sweet voice, the opposite person seems to wake up from a dream. A gentle smile hangs on his face, but the shock and doubt in his eyes still hasn't completely disappeared. The famous, devastatingly beautiful slaying god monarch, Mu Yan, who on the road of cultivation wouldn't know her. My listening sound pavilion has collected portraits of all the famous people in the Shuzhen continent. Miss June and your fellow disciples are all among them. I just didn't expect. Mu Yan, didn't expect what? I didn't expect your true appearance to be. The man's expression is somewhat absent-minded, blurting out a reply, but halfway through, he suddenly stops. "Sorry, I forgot myself." The man composes himself and smiles apologetically. "Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Wenqing Yuan, the shopkeeper. Miss June has found this place, and even offered such a high price. I don't know what you are looking for." Mu Yan looks at him for a while, then casually takes a sip of tea, chuckling. "My 7 fellow apprentices and I sneaked into the Horton tribe, but in the Snow Demon Forest, the 6 of them suddenly disappeared without a trace. Looking at the traces left at the scene, they should have been taken away by force. I wonder if Listening Sound Pavilion can find out where the 6 of them went." Wenqing Yuan is clearly stunned, and only after a long time does he say meaningfully, "Miss June should know that in the Horton tribe, those who sneak into the barrier without permission are sentenced to death. Miss June is so brazen that you can't say it. Aren't you afraid that I will report you to Mu Le Pavilion and the Horton tribe?" Mu Yan takes another sip of tea, her expression becoming more and more languid. "So didn't I just pay a piece of obsidian crystal to shut your mouths? Or is the rule that Listening Sound Pavilion will accept orders as long as there are crystals to earn fake? In the northern land of the Purple Cloud world, the Ning family is afraid of the Cleansing Joy Pavilion." Wenqing Yuan laughed heartily. "Miss June is really an interesting person. You're right, as long as you have enough crystal stones, no matter what kind of information, my Listening Sound Pavilion will definitely help you find out." As he said that, Wenqing Yuan stepped forward and respectfully handed over a red paper crane. "I ask Miss June to be magnanimous for a few hours. This one guarantees that the news of your 6 fellow apprentices will reach your hands within a day at the latest. At that time, if Miss June feels that the information we provided is not worth the price, you are welcome to come and collect the reward at any time. The listening sound pavilion was really confident. Mu Yen chuckles, takes the paper crane, and gets up to leave. Just as he reached the door, when Qing Yuan's voice came from behind him. Miss June, may I take the liberty to ask you a question? Mu Yen turns around to look at him. When Qing Yuan hesitated for a moment. May I ask, who are your parents? Mu Yen stares blankly, then the corner of her lips hooks up. I'm sorry, I'm an orphan. I've never met my biological parents. Great God, June. Seeing Mu Yen coming out of the listening sound pavilion, Lin Xiaomin hurriedly greets her. Great God, June, did you find out the information you wanted? Chapter 2768. Mayan chuckles and nods. I still have to thank you. A shy smile appears on Lin Xiaomin's face. Didn't you say that your brother is here for treatment? Let's go take a look. Mayan thinks that if Lin Xiaomin's brother gets a place to be treated by Mu Pavilion, then it's fine. If he doesn't, then she will try to treat him. It can also be considered as repaying Lin Xiaomin for leading the way. Every year, Mu Pavilion saintesses, who are good at medicine, will treat various diseases for the believers in Wangyin Bazaar. And there's no need to look for the location of Qinyi Hole. In the entire Wangyin Bazaar, the most magnificent building, the most lively and bustling palace. Father, mother, Xiao Chong. Lin Xiaomin pulls Mayan, and with great difficulty, they squeeze through the crowd and see the Lin family waiting in line. Lin Xiaomin immediately takes out the one she collected from the snow forest. Father, mother, look, this is the jade mussel flower I collected. The flower in the little girl's palm blooms layer by layer, its leaves pink and tender and alluring. Although it's not big, the quality of the flower is excellent. Lin Fu and Lin Mu are simply overjoyed. Great, great. We were just worried that we wouldn't be able to get Mu Pavilion's deacon to give us a place. By the way, Minner, this is. After their joy, they see the woman standing next to Lin Xiaomin, and for a moment, they are stunned. The girl is dressed in white, her face is covered with a veil, and her face can't be seen clearly. But just by standing there, she gives people a breathtaking feeling, as if she's carved and polished. At this time, Mayan's attention is focused on the center of the hole. There's a vacuum area in the bustling crowd. An isolation array has been set up around it, and there are several guards wearing the same clothes at the entrance of the array. The barrier blocks the crowd, but it doesn't block the line of sight. So Mayan can see that in the center of the array, there are 5 beautiful female cultivators floating around. These 5 female cultivators are dressed in the same gorgeous clothes, and their waists are embroidered with a pattern similar to Mu Pavilion's emblem. Each of the 5 is holding a musical instrument, playing it from time to time. Because of the isolation array, the music doesn't reach Qinyi Hole. The female cultivator on the far left is playing the Chinese harp, while the ones on the right are jade flute, guzheng, yangqin, and pipe. Mu Yen thought to herself, it seems that Mu Leg treats people with music. That was interesting. Just as she was thinking about it, she heard Lin Papa and Lin Mu talking to her, and she came back to her senses. However, before she could reply, someone shouted from the side, the next batch of believers is here to have an audience with the saintess. Father Lin and Mother Lin shuddered and no longer bothered to curry favor with them. They helped Lin Xiaozong, who was unable to walk, up and walked in the direction of the array. Mu Yan was very curious about Mu Leg's method of using music to treat and save people, so she slowly followed Lin Xiaomin. Jade mussel flower. When the guards beside the formation saw the pink flower in Lin Xiaomin's jade box, their eyes lit up. He had originally wanted to wave his hand impatiently to chase these poor old men away, but he also retracted his hand. This is a good item that can be used to refine the face retaining pill. If we offer it to the sage nun, we will definitely be able to obtain a lot of benefits. Alright. You guys can go in. Remember the rules and don't offend the sage nun. The Lin family was overjoyed to hear this reply. They thanked him profusely and entered the spell formation. Mu Yan also leisurely follows them in. Chapter 2769. Lin Xiaomin's younger brother, Lin Xiaozong, is a delicate youth with a baby face. Due to the torment of illness, his cheeks are sunken, his eyes are dark blue, and he looks pale and thin. As early as when Lin Xiaomin was talking to her parents, Mu Yan quietly grabbed the youth's hand to diagnose. Lin Xiaozong is also interesting. He obviously doesn't know Mu Yan. His life gate on his wrist is grabbed, but he doesn't resist or cry out. He just opens his big eyes and looks curiously at the girl with a light veil in front of him. Mu Yan immediately realizes that Lin Xiaozong's condition is not simple when she probes his pulse. On the surface, it seems to be meridian atrophy. But in fact, she can find that the root is in his dantian. In the center of Lin Xiaozong's dantian, there are wisps of black gas circling around, forming a cyclone. Originally, this cyclone is still small, and Lin Xiaozong's influence is equivalent to nothing. But as the cyclone gets bigger and thicker, around the cyclone, countless black tentacle-like filaments float out and touch the wall of the dantian. From the dantian, it gradually spreads to the meridians. It is these black filaments that make Lin Xiaozong's meridians gradually become fragile and withered from tough and fresh. But if an ordinary doctor doesn't have a powerful divine sense like Mu Yan's, there is no way to probe a cultivator's dantian. After all, the dantian is the most important and most heavily guarded place for every cultivator. A little carelessness, and the spiritual energy in the dantian will cause a riot, it will backfire on the doctor, and both sides will suffer. Therefore, they can only diagnose that Lin Xiaozong's meridians are atrophied and broken. But they don't know that the real root is not in the meridians, but in the dantian. But even Mu Yan has no way to determine what the black cyclone that has occupied most of Lin Xiaozong's dantian is. It's not that there is no way to treat it, but it will take some effort. While thinking, the deacon of Mula Pavilion has already led a group of people to the first saintess, who is playing the Chinese harp. Miss Ye Shuang, these people are from the Lin clan of the Horton tribe. They are willing to offer the 10th rank elixir, Jade Muscle Flower, and ask you to save their son's life. The saintess called Ye Shuang casually glances at Lin Xiaozong, who is lying on the stretcher, and says lightly, meridian atrophy. Yes. Lady Ye Shuang, you also know that meridian atrophy is not easy to treat. In our cleansing joy pavilion, other than the saintess and the elders, only you have the ability to treat it. Hearing the deacon's flattery, Ye Shuang revealed a pleased and proud expression. She took the jade muscle flower and waved to Mr. and Mrs. Lin. Bring the patient over. Lin Xiaozong's father and mother nodded repeatedly. They bowed and were about to carry Lin Xiaozong to the Kong Ho. With just this bend, Lin Xiaomin and Mu Yan's figures were revealed. Ye Shuang's gaze swept over Mu Yan with some suspicion, but it didn't stop there. Instead, it directly fell on Lin Xiaomin. Her two thin eyebrows immediately furrowed. You're from the tribe, why do you have such a strong aura from the outside world? Lin Xiaomin was stunned. Holy nun, please calm down. My Min-her went out to train for a period of time, hoping to increase his strength and contribute more to the tribe and the cleansing joy pavilion. I've only recently returned home, so there's still a lot of aura from the outside world on me. Hearing Lin Fan's parents' explanation, Ye Shuang sneered. Chapter 2770. She looked at Lin Xiaomin with disdain. An unmarried girl went out to train for a while and her body was stained with the aura of at least 3 different men. Our cleansing Le Pavilion doesn't want such a shameless girl to work for us. Yishuang's voice was neither soft nor loud. However, the people in the spell formation could hear it clearly. In an instant, everyone's eyes turned to look at him. Especially the male cultivators and cleansing Le Pavilion deacons. They smiled wretchedly and pointed at Lin Xiaomin. Vaguely, the sound of gossiping could be heard. Lin family's daughter looks so pure, how could she? Ah, Sage Nun Yishuang said that. She's best at judging people. How could she be wrongly accused? Lin Xiaomin felt all the blood in her body rush to her brain. Her entire face turned red. Her lips trembled as if she wanted to explain something, but before the words could come out of her mouth, tears had already rolled down her cheeks. Father Lin and Mother Lin's respectful and fawning expressions froze in an instant. Mother Lin's voice trembled. Sage Nun, how can you say that? My daughter isn't. I won't allow you to say that about my sister, cough cough cough. Lin Xiaozong jumped up from the stretcher. His pale face turned red and the anger in his eyes was obvious. But he was too weak. Once he moved, his condition worsened. He coughed so badly he couldn't even speak. I don't want to cough cough cough. Sorry, it's my fault. Lin Xiaomin grabbed Lin Xiaozong, Lin Fu, and Lin Mu, who still wanted to speak. He knelt down in front of Yishuang and said, Sage Nun, it's me. I didn't know how to behave and brought shame to the tribe and Mu Le Pavilion. Sage Nun, please don't be calculative with a lowly person like me. Sage Nun, please save my brother's life. Lin Xiaomin pressed her head tightly against the cold bluestone ground. Her tears fell one by one, drenching her skirt. But her voice was very steady, and there was not even a bit of hoarseness in it. She knew that compared to her brother's recovery, this humiliation was nothing. Lin Xiaozong was so angry that his eyes turned red. Mother Lin also threw herself into Father Lin's arms, tears gushing out, but she didn't even dare to make a sound. Yishuang looked at Lin Xiaomin's humble appearance and heard the people around her pointing at her. A disdainful smile appeared on her face. All right, get up. I didn't say I wouldn't treat your brother. Don't pretend to be wronged. The unmarried female cultivators of the northern continent have always been as pure as ice and as clean as jade, scrupulously abiding by the virtue of womanhood. We don't allow you to come into contact with the outside world because we don't want you to be tainted by the bad customs of the outside world. Now that you have lost your chastity, you no longer have the right to worship in front of the shrine. Your Lin family will also be shamed because of you, and you will never be able to raise your head again. I exposed you in front of everyone because I hope that the female cultivators in the tribe will learn a lesson from this and not follow in your footsteps. What, are you still unconvinced? When Lin Xiaomin heard Yishuang's aggressive and humiliating words, she held on to her brother's trembling hand tightly. She raised her head and smiled at Yishuang. Sage Nun is right. Xiaomin reaped what she sowed and brought shame to the family. It is Xiaomin's fortune that Sage Nun is teaching me a lesson. I won't dare to be unconvinced. Chapter 2771. Yishuang smiled with satisfaction, and her hands gently stroked the Chinese harp in front of her. Her slender fingers gently plucked the strings, and a melodious sound flowed out. Soon, a faint purple light emitted from the Chinese harp and enveloped Lin Xiaozong. Lin Xiaomin wiped away her tears and knelt beside her brother, watching the scene nervously. Yishuang was playing an ancient song as beautiful and elegant as the setting sun. Wisps of spiritual power brushed past Lin Xiaomin's thin and fragile body like a gentle breeze. Then, Lin Xiaozong's pale face gradually began to turn red. His originally skinny limbs seemed to have been injected with fresh flesh and blood, becoming plump and strong little by little. Lin Xiaomin was overjoyed to see this scene. The humiliation that she had just suffered was completely forgotten. The cultivators who were waiting for the other saintesses to treat couldn't help but look over and exclaim in admiration. It said that Mula Pavilions, Frost, Snow, Wind, Moon, and Cloud, is the best at treating internal injuries with music. I didn't believe it before, but now that I've seen it with my own eyes, I really can't help but be amazed. This is simply like bringing the dead back to life. Saintess Yishuang is indeed good at treating internal injuries, but the other 4 saintesses also have their own strengths. Especially Saintess Yun's ability to assist on the battlefield. I heard that she is second only to the saintess in Mula Pavilion, and even the elders praise her. Ding! However, just as everyone was talking about the melodious music in full swing, a sudden noise interrupted the smooth performance of the Chinese harp. What's going on? Why was Saintess Yishuang's performance interrupted? Yishuang suddenly raised her head and looked angrily in Mu Yan's direction. Who are you? Did you eat a bear's heart or a leopard's gall? How dare you interrupt my performance? Mu Yan grabbed a small stone in her hand and casually tossed it into the air. She chuckled, sorry, I didn't want to be rude to the saintess. But if I didn't interrupt your performance, this child would have been crippled by your treatment. Lin Xiaomin quickly got up and went to Mu Yan's side. She called out nervously, God Jun. She didn't understand. Her brother's meridian atrophy was about to be cured. Why did God Jun interrupt the saintess? In this way, didn't her previous efforts and forbearance go to waste? Mu Yan smiles and pats the little girl's shoulder, saying warmly, don't worry, I will save your brother. Lin Xiaomin was stunned. Her lips moved, but no words came out. Miss June was a powerful sword cultivator, but she did not know any medical skills. If little brother missed this opportunity, his cultivation career would most likely be over. But for some reason, when she heard Mu Yan say these words, her heart surged with an instinctive trust. Just like in Fusang City, everyone thought that the sky of this hellish cage was unbreakable, but a young girl told them that she could bring them to pierce through this sky, and then they really did. Yishuang didn't expect that there would be someone in the Horton tribe who dared to be so disrespectful to her and even question her medical skills. Instantly, he flew into a rage and stood up abruptly. I dare you to say that again. Mu Yan slowly walks to Lin Xiaozong's side and crouches down, grabbing his wrist. Then she looks up at Yishuang, your treatment method is wrong. This child still has a chance to recover, but after being tormented by you, he can only be raised like a medicine jar, which is equivalent to a cripple. Even if you ask me to say it 100 times, the answer will be the same. Chapter 2772. Those who blaspheme the saintess will be sent to the unclean abyss, too, preposterous. Where did this shrew come from? How dare she speak nonsense in front of the saintess? Is this person blind? If she didn't interrupt, the youngest son of the Lin family would have recovered. I think I saw this woman brought in by Lin Xiaomin. I don't see the aura of the Horton tribe's cultivation method on her. She should be an outside cultivator, right? Is Lin Xiaomin stupid? He actually brought a shrew to offend the saintess. This time, her brother's only chance of being saved is gone. Bah, even if he can't be saved, he deserves it. This woman is so arrogant. How dare she slander the saintess? If we don't punish her, won't people think that our Horton tribe is easy to bully? Someone who blasphemes the saintess like this should be sent to the unclean abyss. Right, send her to the unclean abyss. As the shouts of the surrounding people grew louder and louder, the deacons and guards of Clean Pavilion also surrounded Mu Yan with unkind expressions. Yishuang's face was as cold as ice. She stared at Mu Yan coldly. I, Yishuang, have treated countless patients. Just the meridian atrophy alone, I've cured dozens. How dare you question my medical skills today? Fine, tell me, how should I cripple this brat? If you can't give me a good reason, don't blame me for being merciless. A middle-aged man in the line of Saintess Yu, who was playing the dulcimer, suddenly walked up and said loudly, "A few years ago, I also suffered from meridian atrophy. It was Saintess Yishuang who cured me. You lowly outsider woman, how dare you slander the Saintess of Clean Le Pavilion in the clear night hall? What are your intentions?" Mu Yan looked at the middle-aged man and sneered, "Do you really think that your illness has been cured? That's right, your meridians are no longer atrophied, but the spiritual qi in your body is starting to go out of control. It often attacks the Feng qi, Bai Hui, and Shinkei acupuncture points, making you unable to eat or sleep in peace. Isn't this the reason why you came to find the Saintess of Clean Le Pavilion today?" The middle-aged man was stunned and almost blurted out, How do you know?" Mayan says indifferently, "I also know that this isn't the first time you've fallen ill. A year ago, when your illness flared up, the spiritual qi only attacked the lesser yin and lesser yang meridians in your feet, making it difficult for you to walk. But this time, your life is in danger. However, you don't have to worry too much. This pain won't last for long." She chuckled softly, "Because when your illness acts up for the third time, you will die immediately and be completely free." When the middle-aged man heard this, his body trembled uncontrollably. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down. He wanted to roar at this girl for spouting nonsense and refute her loudly, but all his words were stuck in his throat and he couldn't make a single sound. Because he knew that this woman was right. Every symptom she mentioned was extremely accurate. It was as if she had seen his illness with her own eyes. Unknowingly, his mind had been completely gripped by the last sentence, "When the third relapse occurs, he will die immediately." Even his reverence for Mu Lag had been thrown to the back of his head. Why did you? Then what should I do? What should I do?" Mu Yan's gaze turned towards Yishuang and she said in a low voice, "On the surface, Lin Shaozong's illness seems to be the atrophy of his meridians. But in fact, the root of the illness isn't in his meridians, but in his dantian. If it's only treated as an ordinary vein atrophy to strengthen his meridians, perhaps the root of the illness can be trapped in his dantian for several years, but it won't cure the root of the illness." Chapter 2773. When it flares up again, my condition will only be worse than before, and I might not even be able to fully recover. If you don't believe me, you can ask all the patients with meridian atrophy that Mu Lag has treated. Is it true that other diseases will break out within a year or two, or even 3 to 5 years? The girl's voice was clear and sweet, like the sounds of nature, but no one in the spell formation was in the mood to listen. The expressions of everyone on the other hand seemed as if they'd seen a ghost, and they were filled with panic, terror, bewilderment, and uneasiness. Lin Xiaomin grabs Mu Yan's arm. "God Jun, are you saying that my brother will die even if he's cured? How could this be? How could this be? Great God Jun, can you please save him?" Maya nods, and is about to take out the Tian Mo Qin. Suddenly, there was a sound that sounded like silk tearing. "Young lady, you sure have a big mouth." A tender voice filled with anger rang out. The 4 saintesses, Yishui, Yifeng, Yiyu, and Yiyun, who were still treating the patients, walked over with large strides. The one in the lead was Yiyun, who had the most ordinary appearance but an elegant and noble temperament. Holding the pipe, she slowly walks over to Mu Yan and coldly says, "Miss, are you questioning my Mu Le Pavilion's medical skills?" Yashua said, Our cleansing joy pavilion has been unrivaled in the fields of assisting musicians and doctors for thousands of years. You are just a little girl, so how dare you slander us?" Mu Yan shakes her head, I have no enmity with your Mula Pavilion, why would I question and slander you? Yishuang said angrily, shameless bitch, you still want to argue. I'm not questioning or slandering you. What were you doing just now? Mayan chuckles, of course I'm fulfilling the duties of a doctor. The Mula Pavilion is unparalleled in the world and has been high and mighty for thousands of years. Do you really think that your medical skills are invincible and that you can disregard the life and death of your patients and only care about your own glory? Impudent! Ye Yun shouted angrily. She could no longer conceal the anger in her eyes. Fine. Since you say that you're a physician, then I'll do as you say. I really want to see how you're going to cure this meridian atrophy. Mu Yen nodded and said, all right. It just so happens that I'm also a music doctor, and I don't have a suitable musical instrument with me. Why don't I borrow your Konghuang? As she spoke, she had already walked to the front of Yishuang's phoenix head Chinese harp, and her slender jade-like fingers lightly plucked the strings. The smooth music immediately swept through the void, causing everyone's anxious spirit to be shaken. Yishuang was about to go crazy. She reached out to grab the weapon in her cosmos sack, but was stopped by Yi Yun. Don't worry, this Chinese harp recognizes you as its master. She can't even bring out 70% of the power of your phoenix head Chinese harp. I'd like to see how she's going to treat it. Hearing this, Yishuang gritted her teeth and gave up. On the other side, Mu Yen gradually became familiar with playing the Kongho. The originally clumsy and harsh music became melodious and sweet. Soon, pure spiritual power flowed towards Lin Xiaozong like a gurgling stream. As the saying goes, a connoisseur who understands music will know the moment he makes a move. As soon as Mu Yan's smooth melody is played, Yi Yun and the others' expressions all change. Such a powerful divine sense, such rich and mellow spiritual power. Yishuang's phoenix head Chinese harp has no less than 72 strings. It's a rare 9th grade spiritual tool in the world. The music played by each string can be attached to a cultivator's spiritual power, transforming it into auxiliary, offensive, or healing energy. Chapter 2774. Normally, Yishuang can only control 48 strings at most, even if she uses all of her cultivation. But this girl uses the harp that Yishuang has recognized as its master, and actually attaches spiritual power to all 72 strings. Moreover, the healing spiritual power that envelopes Lin Xiaozong along with the music is so pure, slender, and endless. Even in the entire Cleansing Joy Pavilion, there are very few people who can do this. Yishuang's complexion alternates between green and white, and her fists are cracking. The entire clear night hall is completely silent. Everyone looked at the veiled young girl with shock and suspicion, not knowing who she was. However, this silence only lasts for a moment, before it is interrupted by a heart-wrenching cry. Xiaozong, Xiaozong, what's wrong with you? Everyone looks over at the sound, only to find that Lin Xiaozong, who has just been treated by Yishuang, has a flushed face, and his body is trembling like a sieve. Bean-sized beads of sweat roll down from his forehead. Lin Xiaozong grits his teeth, even biting his lips until they bleed, but he refuses to make the slightest sound. This is also the reason why no one noticed his abnormal condition. But now, even a fool can see that Lin Xiaozong is in great pain, or it could be said that he is in so much pain that he wants to die. What's going on? Isn't that girl treating him? Why is the Lin family's boy's condition worsening instead? That goes without saying. It's definitely a quack doctor who's misleading people. Listening to what she said just now, I was almost fooled. Now it seems that not only can this person not be treated, he's going to die because of her. Lin Fu and Lin Mu also hear everyone's discussion, and for a moment, they are out of their wits and in a panic. Lin Xiaozong couldn't bear it any longer, and he lets out a mournful cry. His whole body curls up into a ball, and convulses violently. Xiaozong, Xiaozong, don't scare me. Lin Mu cries, wanting to hug her son, but Lin Xiaozong, who has lost his mind from the pain, pushes her away. Stop playing. Do you want to kill my son? Lin Fu roars, and pounces towards Mu Yen. However, before he could get close to the harp, he was blocked by an invisible barrier. The young girl sitting in front of the Chinese harp had an indifferent expression on her face. She played her own piece as if she didn't hear Lin Xiaozong's painful howls or the angry roars of Lin Fu and Lin Mu. Sage nun, please save my son. Mother Lin had no other choice. She could only pounce in front of Yishuang and kowtow. Please, holy nun, please save my son. Please, please. Yishuang sneered as arrogance and disdain reappeared on her face. What do you think I, the cleansing Le Pavilion Saintess, am? Just now, when I wanted to save your son, you didn't believe me, but chose to believe a woman of unknown origin. Now you want me to save your son. She glanced at Lin Xiaomin, and a hint of malice flashed across her eyes. This woman is trying to defame the Mu Le Pavilion's reputation and disturb the peace of the tribe. She must be a spy sent by the other 3 continents to the northern land. Your daughter has already committed a heinous crime by bringing such a sinister person into the Horton tribe. She has no right to receive the protection of the immortal Mu goddess. Mother Lin cried her heart out. She could only kowtow again and again, and beg. Yishuang continued, it's not impossible for my Mu Le Pavilion to save your son. But at least your daughter has to atone for her crimes, right? Lin Mu suddenly raised her head, and a hint of hope appeared in her eyes. How can I atone for my crimes? Holy nun, please tell me. Chapter 2775. Mother Lin raised her head, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. How do you want me to atone for my sins? Saintess, please tell me. She pulled Lin Xiaomin over and made her kneel down. Saintess, we will do our best to fulfill your orders. Yishuang handed a dark purple dagger to Lin Xiaomin. Under her dazed gaze, he said in an extremely low voice, this dagger comes from the same source as the refining material of my phoenix head harp. You only need to take this dagger and pretend to get close to that woman, and then, Lin Xiaomin's eyes widened in horror and she shrank back. No, I won't hurt God Jun. I won't hurt God Jun. Yishuang was annoyed to see her acting as if she was avoiding a snake or scorpion. She kicked her away and sneered, this is the last chance I'm giving you. Since you're unwilling, then you can watch your brother die with your own eyes. Mother Lin grabbed Lin Xiaomin's clothes and wailed. Min quickly agree to the saintess. Xiaozong is your only brother. Lin Xiaomin shook her head desperately and cried. No, absolutely not. I would have died if it wasn't for God Jun. How can I harm him? Mother, you want me to harm God Jun? Why don't you just kill me now? While the Lin family was in a gloomy mood, the cultivators watching from the side were all gloating and pointing at them. A clever deacon even turned on the soundproofing effect of the array so that the cultivators waiting outside could hear what was happening inside. Do you see that? This is the consequence of offending Mu Le Pavilion. The Lin family found the jade mussel flower and was treated by the saintess. That was equivalent to dog shit luck. Unfortunately, they don't know what's good for them. The Lin family is finished. The sound from the array could be heard outside, so naturally, the sound from outside could also be heard. Mother Lin felt completely disheartened when she heard the people throwing stones at her while she was down. She couldn't take a breath and collapsed. Mother, don't scare me. Whoa, mother, little brother. Mother Lin held Lin Xiaomin's hand tightly. Min I beg you, listen to the saintess. Save your brother. Lin Xiaomin's heart is filled with despair. Her tears can't stop flowing, but no matter what, she can't say anything to hurt Mayan. Mother, don't cry, I'm fine. Amidst the cries of the two people, a hoarse voice that sounded like gossamer cut in. At first, Lin Xiaomin didn't even hear it clearly. When she realized who was speaking, she suddenly turned her head. Xiaozong. Little brother, why you're awake. Papa Lin and Mama Lin were in disbelief at first, then they pounced on him. Xiaozong, what do you think? Lin Xiaozong's face was pale and his aura was weak, but he still smiled gently at the three of them. A faint fluorescent light enveloped his body, and thin threads invisible to the naked eye moved in and out of his body along with the music floating in the air, as if they were cleansing something or repairing something. Father, mother, sister, don't worry, I'm much better now. Just now, my dantian was in so much pain, as if it had been forcefully crushed by a hand. But then, there was a warm flow that flowed in, and I felt that my dantian had been reshaped. Before my meridians had withered, I always felt that there was something in my dantian that made me unable to freely operate my spiritual power, but now, that heavy feeling of sediment, it's all gone. Chapter 2776. Lin Xiaomin wiped the tears off her face. Little brother, you're saying that you're fine now. Did Jun Emosia heal you? Lin Xiaozong nodded. When my dantian was being reconstructed, I knew I was recovering, but I couldn't speak because of the pain. Now that my meridians are being reconstructed, it's not that painful anymore. I finally have the strength to speak. Lin Xiaozong's parents were already in despair. They were overjoyed to hear their son speak. Lin Xiaozong's mother grabbed Lin Xiaozong's hand and couldn't help but cry. Son, you scared me to death. Lin Xiaozong hurriedly said, don't move. Didn't you hear Xiaozong say that your meridians haven't been reconstructed? Lin Xiaozong struggled to hold his parents' hands and said softly, Dad, Mom, don't blame sister. She believed that God Jun was right, that saintess humiliated sister. I didn't want her to heal me, luckily God Jun is here. The people in Clear Night Hall didn't notice the changes in the Lin family. Everyone was immersed in worship and awe of Mulu Pavilion. With the Lin family as an example, Mulu Pavilion's reputation was pushed to the peak. Yishuang and the other four listened to the thousands of cultivators in Clear Night Hall shouting, Long live Mulu Pavilion, in unison. However, at this moment, a high-pitched music soared into the sky. It was a performance of the Chinese harp. The sound of the Chinese harp was usually gentle and elegant, but not loud. But this music drowned out everyone's voices. Everyone's eyes were unconsciously drawn to it. In the next moment, they saw a young man with blood stains on his chest leap 3 feet into the air. It was unknown when a 3-foot-long sword had appeared in his hand, but it danced in the air like a flower with the sword. The young man's swordsmanship wasn't outstanding, but the spiritual energy radiating from his sword was indescribably pure and unrestrained. It was as if the sword had become a part of his body. Isn't that the kid from the Lin family? Didn't he die from the treatment? Did I sense wrongly? Why do I feel that his sword intent and spiritual energy are both stronger than before he got sick? Lin Xiaozong somersaulted in the air and landed in front of Mu Yan. He knelt down on one knee and said loudly, Thank you, great God Jun, for saving my life. Mu Yan's fingertips gently plucked the strings of the Chinese harp, and she says with a slight smile, It's also because of your perseverance that you can endure the pain of the dantian remodeling. Her control of the Chinese harp is far less smooth than that of the Tian Mo Qin. A ninth-grade spirit artifact was far inferior to an ancient divine artifact. So when she was saving Lin Xiaozong, she went through a lot of trouble and almost failed at the last moment. Fortunately, although Lin Xiaozong was young, his mind was extremely persevering. He actually relied on his willpower to endure the torment of his dantian's shattering and mending. It was no wonder that at such a young age, he was able to reach the peak of the Jidan realm. Hearing Mu Yan's praise, Lin Xiaozong shows a silly smile. Mayan holds out her hand. Come here, I'll take your pulse. Lin Xiaozong hurried forward. Seeing the young girl's slender, jade-like fingers on his wheat-colored skin, his heart suddenly beats like a drum, and his face flushes red. Mu Yan didn't notice the young man's thoughts at all. She says with a warm smile, "Your illness has been cured, and you can cultivate without worries in the future." Thank you, great God June. Chapter 2777. Face-slapping scene 3. Mu Yan stands up from the Kongho and stretches. There were still tears on Lin Xiaoming's face, but her smile was brighter than the sun. She took 2 steps forward and knelt in front of Mu Yan. Her almond-shaped eyes were as bright as the stars. God June, how can you be so powerful? Is there anything in this world that you can't do? Father Lin and Mother Lin also stumbled over. They bent their knees and were about to kneel. Mu Yan promptly reaches out and gently brushes it away. Spiritual energy surged and turned into a stream of air, directly lifting Lin Fu, Lin Mu, and Lin Xiaomin up. She saw that Father Lin and Mother Lin's faces were full of guilt. Their faces were red and they couldn't say a word for a long time. She couldn't help but smile. You don't have to take it to heart. It's normal for you to be afraid in that kind of situation. Mother Lin's tears gushed out all of a sudden. She trembled as she asked, "My son, is he really cured?" "Mom, what are you talking about?" Lin Xiaozong grabbed Mother Lin and said anxiously, "Of course the great god June cured me. Who else knows my body better than I do? Didn't you notice that my cultivation has already reached the peak of the golden core stage and will soon break through to the nascent soul stage?" Whoosh! Before Mother Lin could react, the entire Clear Night Hall was in an uproar. In particular, the middle-aged man whose illness was exposed by Mayan before, is even more aghast, his legs trembling. This was because no one knew better than him that when the sage nun treated his meridians, his condition wasn't as good as Lin Xiaozong's. He could walk and use his spiritual power. However, his original cultivation had dropped by a large margin. At that time, he felt that he was already very lucky to be able to keep his life, so he thanked Cleansing Le Pavilion profusely. But now, looking at Lin Xiaozong's carefree manner, his heart was filled with mixed feelings and an indescribable fear. Could it be? Could it be that it was really as the young lady had said, that he wasn't suffering from meridian atrophy, and that the next time it acted up, it would be the day of his death? The middle-aged man unconsciously staggers towards Mu Yan. Young lady, what you just said is true. Mayan is surprised. If you don't believe it, then just treat it as a fake. The more casual her attitude was, the more fear the middle-aged man felt. Will I really have another relapse? The next time the illness acts up, I will die. Mu Yan quietly looks at him, not saying a word. Young lady, please save my life. The middle-aged man could no longer suppress the fear in his heart and fell to his knees. As he spoke, he pulled down the Qianquan bag on his waist with a trembling hand and took out all the treasures inside. As long as Miss can help me recover like Lin Xiaozong, no, as long as Miss can protect my life, these are all yours. Everyone who saw this scene could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. 1,000-year warm jade, 10,000-year mysterious wood, blood spirit grass. Hiss, each of them is worth more than 10,000 crystals. Who is this person? You don't know him. He's Ni Baichuan, the son of our tribe's elder Ni. The Ni family is famous for being wealthy in the entire Horton tribe. Every year, they offer cartloads of gifts to Cleansing Joy Pavilion and the chief. Now, does this young master Ni want to give all the offerings that were originally given to the Cleansing Joy Pavilion to this foreign woman? Sigh, it's a matter of life and death after all. Even the sage nun of Mu Le Pavilion couldn't cure it, but this woman did. Mu Yan didn't want to pay attention to Ni Baichuan. However, at this time, Qi Huang's voice reached her ears. Promise him that there's no attribute substance inside the Qianquan bag. Chapter 2778. Face-slapping scene 4. Mu Yan's eyes brighten, and she immediately coughs. At most, I can only eliminate your illness and save your life. It's impossible for you to restore your cultivation like Lin Xiaozong. Are you sure you want to give me everything in the Qianquan bag? Ni Baichuan nods again and again. Yes, yes, yes. What do these worldly possessions count for? If Goddess Doctor thinks it's not enough, I can go home and get more. Mu Yan leisurely smiles and sits down cross-legged. The Tian Mo Qin slowly appears in front of her. The middle-aged man's injury is much more serious than Lin Xiaozong's. Using other people's spiritual tools may not be able to cure him. But Ni Baichuan is accustomed to the gorgeous and exquisite musical instruments of the Horton tribe. He is somewhat disdainful of the black Tian Mo Qin, which doesn't even have any decorative patterns or spiritual aura surging around it. Goddess Doctor, don't you have a suitable musical instrument? Wouldn't the effect of the treatment be greatly reduced? How about I give you a guqin? Mu Yan looks at him with a smile that isn't a smile. Your illness has already entered your internal organs and bone marrow. Ordinary spiritual tools can't cure it. Rest assured, since I've accepted your treasure, the effect of the treatment will naturally be worthy of your investment. Ni Baichuan secretly says, could your broken guqin be more powerful than Mu Le Pavilion's phoenix head harp? But before he can continue to persuade her, the sound of the guqin is suddenly heard. Ah! Ni Baichuan's whole body quivers, and he opens his mouth to let out a series of miserable howls like a pig being slaughtered. The onlookers originally wanted to ridicule a few words like Ni Baichuan. What kind of broken guqin would dare to compare with Mu Le Pavilion's phoenix head harp? But as soon as the guqin sounds, they are all dumbfounded. What kind of vigorous and powerful spiritual power is this? The overflowing energy falls into their bodies like little stars, even bringing them an unparalleled sense of comfort. Heavens, my injury, the injury that I originally wanted to ask the sage nun to treat is healed. What kind of musical instrument is this? What kind of terrifying medical instrument is this? No wonder she just said that the phoenix head harp is just an ordinary spiritual tool. That guqin must be a divine tool, right? In the entire Mu Le Pavilion, apart from the sage nun's solitary snow zither, what other instrument can compare to it? Crack! Ye Yun couldn't help but break the finger glove she was wearing into pieces. Gnashing her teeth, she growled, how can such a lowly woman be compared to the saintess? Ye Shuang said fiercely, this bitch is clearly here to trample on the reputation of the Cleansing Le Pavilion. If we let her go today, news of this will spread throughout the entire northern continent. Where will the Cleansing Le Pavilion hide its face? Ye Yun slowly clenched her fists as dense killing intent flashed in her eyes. This time, the treatment lasted for 2 long hours. However, not a single person in the clear night hall left in advance. Finally, the zither music came to an end, and Ni Baichuan's humming became softer. His whole body has already changed from sitting cross-legged with Mayant to curled up on the ground. Hey, young Master Ni, are you still alive? Someone approached Ni Baichuan, wanting to pull him over to check on the situation. He didn't expect that Ni Baichuan would suddenly jump up and directly hit his head on the man's chin, causing him to cry out in pain. However, Ni Baichuan moved his body and let out a hearty laugh. "I've finally endured it, ha 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 ha, this feeling is too comfortable. Ever since the meridian atrophy flared up, I haven't felt this relaxed in a long time." Chapter 2779. Don't block my way to the unclean abyss. 1. Lady Godly Doctor, thank you for saving my life. Ni Baichuan's smiling face is full of wrinkles as he bows to Mayan. Mayan puts away the Tian Mo Chin and tosses the Qiankuan bag in her hand into the air. In a good mood, she says, "No need to thank me, you've paid me enough. It's only natural that I treat you. We each take what we need, we don't owe each other anything." As soon as she finished speaking, everyone in Clear Night Hall rushed over with a whoosh. "Lady Godly Doctor, I also have a treasure here, please take a look at me." "Lady Godly Doctor, look at me, I have a 10th grade good fortune pill here. I'm willing to give it as a reward, I only ask you to save me." In a split second, Mayan is completely surrounded by people. Listening to the noise, she has a headache. She pulls Lin Xiaomin and says, "Let's get out of here first." She still hasn't found her fellow apprentices, so she doesn't have the patience to treat everyone here one by one. Just then, an ear-piercing sound of a flute suddenly rings out. Immediately after, countless cold lights swiftly stab towards Mayan. A stern shout rang out, silencing the noisy Clear Night Hall in an instant. "Who said you can leave?" Led by the 5 saintesses in fluttering fairy dresses, everyone from Mula Pavilion has a frosty expression as they approach Mayan step by step. A young deacon standing next to Yi Yun glanced at all the cultivators present with a sharp gaze and said coldly, "Today, anyone who has been healed by this woman will not be allowed to step into the territory of the Mula Pavilion, and don't expect to receive any treatment or blessing from the Mula Pavilion. You'd better think about it carefully. Can you bear the consequences of offending the Mula Pavilion for a woman of dubious origins who is pretending to be a ghost?" As soon as these words come out, many people's faces turn pale. They originally planned to rush towards Mayan and ask for her treatment, but their footsteps also stop. Yi Yun looks at Mayan coldly and says, "Miss, you used our Mula Pavilion as a stepping stone to build your own reputation, and now you want to leave so easily." Stepping stone. Mayan chuckles, "Only if you're not strong enough can I step on you. You. Impudent. What an arrogant woman." The killing intent in Yi Yun's eyes is like raging waves. Good. Good. It's been a long time since someone as shameless and arrogant as you has appeared in the northern continent. Mu Yan pinched a piece of jade that she took out from Ni Baichuan's Qiankuan bag. She flipped it between her fingers and absent-mindedly said, "Thanks for the compliment. In the next few days, I will continue to disturb the northern continent. As the sage nun wishes, I will become even more arrogant and let your cleansing Le Pavilion adapt." Mayan's temperament has always been that if people respect me, I will respect them tenfold. In the beginning, she didn't want to become enemies with Mu Leg. But now that they had come to bully her, if she just accepted it, she wouldn't be the demoness who made the entire cultivation land tremble in fear. Yi Yun was so angry that his face turned pale, and his chest heaved up and down. However, a ferocious smile appeared on his face. "How arrogant! Do you know the consequences of offending the Cleansing Joy Pavilion in the northern continent? Guards!" Yi Yun waved her hand. "Send her to the unclean abyss." "No!" Lin Xiaomin screamed, "Sage nun, have mercy. Great God, June didn't do anything wrong, how can you send her to the unclean abyss? That's a land of death, there's no return." Yishuang sneered, "Since you're so concerned about this foreign woman, why don't you accompany her to the unclean abyss?" "No, I don't think it's just you." Chapter 2780. Don't block my way to the unclean abyss. 2. Asking for votes. Yu Shuang's venomous gaze swept over Lin Fu, Lin Mu, and Lin Xiaozong, and she said faintly, I now suspect that all of you in the Lin family are blasphemers and should be sent to the unclean abyss. Lin Xiaomin felt a loud bang in his head, and all the blood in his body seemed to rush to his head. Father Lin and Mother Lin were so frightened that they fell to their knees and wailed loudly, Sage Nun, please spare me, Sage Nun. We sincerely believe in the Fairy Mu Goddess, we are not blasphemers, please forgive our family. Lin Xiaomin and Lin Xiaozong still wanted to speak, but Lin Fu and Lin Mu firmly held them back. Hot tears fell on their hands, making the siblings unable to say a word. Yi Yun closed her eyes, her hands made a complicated gesture, and she muttered something. Soon, a portal of light appeared in the clear night hall. Everyone in the hall was scared out of their wits when they saw the portal of light, and they retreated one by one. It was even to the extent that some cowardly people had already knelt on the ground with a thump, and they shivered while remaining silent like cicadas in the winter. 2 deacons of the leaving body stage came forward, their eyes flashing, and they blocked Mayan's way. The door to the unclean abyss has been opened for you, young lady, please. Mayan raised her hand, and the 7 absolute sword appeared in her hand. There was no fear in the girl's moving voice, only arrogance and disdain. I'm sorry, there is no one in this world that can force me. Clap, clap, clap. Suddenly, a rhythmic voice came from the outside of the hall. Mayan froze, stopped talking, and looked up. She saw a red paper crane flying quickly towards her. This was a message from the Listening Sound Pavilion. Mayan's heart warmed up, and she quickly reached out to grab the paper crane and opened it. The person you are looking for has been sent to the unclean abyss as a blasphemer. Clap. Mayan crumpled the paper crane into a ball, and the corners of her mouth hooked up into a cold arc. Excuse me. The 7 absolute sword patted the deacon's face. Don't block my way. The deacon didn't care about this little girl at all. Who knew? Before he could clearly see how Mu Yen moved, he felt a bone-chilling cold slap his face a few times in a humiliating manner. The deacon's eyes widened as he tried to draw his sword. However, his body seemed to be firmly restrained by an invisible pressure, and he couldn't even move his hands. A look of shock finally appeared on his face. You, who exactly are you? What do you want? Mayan sneered. With another slap, she pushed the deacon 3 to 5 steps away, revealing the teleportation array that led to the unclean abyss. She slowly walked towards the teleportation array until her figure gradually disappeared into the light gate. An indifferent and lazy voice came from the clear night hall. Of course, I'm going to the unclean abyss. Great God, June! Lin Xiaomin cried out. She no longer cared about her parents, and rushed towards the transmission array. However, just as she approached, the teleportation light door had already slowly disappeared. Only Lin Xiaomin was left sitting on the spot with a pale face. She could no longer hold back her tears. Yi Yun flicked her sleeve. You overestimate yourself. Pfft, is that woman crazy? Does she know what kind of place the unclean abyss is? She thinks she's very powerful, so she's so arrogant, right? But she doesn't know that the unclean abyss isn't a place where strong people can survive. Hee, she wants to court death, so isn't that just right? It also saves us a lot of trouble. Let's go, we'll go back to the pavilion and report what happened today to the saintess. It's August, and the goddess list is about to begin. In order to earn a spot on the list, Ozzy will work hard to add updates from time to time, so I hope that everyone can support and vote for me. Thank you. Chapter 2781. Young Master Yun Zhao's Admirers. 1. Cleansing Le Pavilion was called a pavilion, but it occupied 1/3 of the northern lands of Purple Cloud Realm. Towering palaces, solemn temples, mountains surrounding the main building, and a rippling Lansang lake in the south formed the graceful and beautiful scenery of Cleansing Le Pavilion. And in the center of Cleansing Le Pavilion, there was a tower that reached into the clouds. The tower enshrined the gods of Cleansing Le Pavilion and the Horton tribe for generations. So, this tower was also called God-Praying Tower. Within thousands of meters of the God-Praying Tower, there were only flags embroidered with the emblem of Cleansing Le Pavilion fluttering in the wind, and 2 deacons of Cleansing Le Pavilion stood guard beside the flags. All the flags formed a formation, surrounding and protecting the God-Praying Tower, and no one could approach it at will. 1,000 meters east of the God-Praying Tower was the center of Cleansing Le Pavilion. This was the most beautiful building complex in the entire Cleansing Le Pavilion. Pavilions, terraces, carved beams and painted pillars, every detail exuded luxury and exquisiteness. But there was not the slightest bit of vulgarity, only an enviable feeling of floating in the air. This was the supreme saintess temple of the entire Cleansing Le Pavilion. The Tinglan Waterside Pavilion, to the west of the saintess temple, was like spring all year round. Beside the Waterside Pavilion was a 10,000-year-old mysterious willow. When the breeze blew, willow catkins flew and floated around. But these willow catkins not only did not hinder breathing, but when they landed on a cultivator, they would silently integrate into their body, cleansing the impurities in their meridians. Under the Waterside Pavilion, the water from Lansang Lake was sparkling, as clear as a mirror, reflecting every stone and scenery. It was beautiful. At this time in the Waterside Pavilion, a woman in a purple dress was leaning against the railing, looking down at a picture scroll in her hand, lost in thought. 2 strands of hair fell down, sticking to the side of her face, accentuating her skin as white as snow and her beautiful appearance. "Saintess, why are you hiding here alone again? Let us look for you." Hearing the voice, the woman hurriedly closed the picture scroll in her hand and hid it in her sleeve. She forced herself to calm down and said, "What's the matter?" The one who just spoke was a little girl who looked to be in her 20s. She was wearing a pink dress and looked pretty and cute. Hearing this, he looked at the woman's somewhat messy sleeves and giggled, "Saintess, don't hide it. Are you looking at young Master Yun Zhao's painting again?" The current Holy Maiden of Cleansing Joy Pavilion was called by Lan. Ji was the surname of the pavilion master and saintess of Cleansing Joy Pavilion. It could also be called the royal surname of the Horton tribe. The waves were the waves of the Lansang Lake. To the people of the Horton tribe, Lansang Lake and the Spirit Praying Tower were the 2 most mysterious, revered, and grateful sacred places in the tribe. The azure billow lake looked inconspicuous, but it contained a powerful spiritual vein. Most of the spirit plants growing on Lake Lansang were flourishing, and most of the cultivators growing on Lake Lansang were progressing rapidly in their cultivation. Those who suffered light injuries, as long as they jumped into the Lansang Lake, their injuries would rapidly recover. Therefore, many people of the Horton tribe called Lansang Lake the Mother Lake. Since the establishment of the Cleansing Joy Pavilion, Ban Lan was the first saintess to be crowned with the name Lan. It was probably because she was also the only musician in thousands of years who could play the divine instrument of Cleansing Joy Pavilion, solitary snow and snow. Hearing the servant girl Dong Ling's teasing, Ban Lan blushed and glared at her. "You, what nonsense are you talking about?" "Hee hee." Dong Ling was not the least bit afraid and said with a smile, "Saintess, ever since you went out to train and were saved by young Master Yun Zhao, you've been secretly looking at his painting scrolls ever since you came back. You've even asked us to inquire about him from time to time." Chapter 2782. Yun Zhao's admirers, too. The fact that you are in love with Mr. Yun Zhao, the people of our Saint Lady Temple have long known about it. Hong Lan said angrily, "If you talk nonsense again, I will throw you into the unclean abyss. Tell me why you are looking for me." Dongling shrunk her neck and said with a smile, Saint Lady Yiyun and the others want to see you. They said they have something important to report. Honglan nodded and walked towards the main hall. Dongling followed behind her and couldn't help but say, although Yun Xiao is a cultivator from the outside world, he is one of the best in the world in terms of appearance and character. Even the cultivators from the outside world are somewhat arrogant. I wonder if he is willing to marry into Mulu Pavilion. When Bai Lan heard this, her footsteps paused and her brows furrowed slightly. She remembered the scene in the Deep Mountain Relic where the gentle and elegant but also indifferent man turned and left. She unconsciously clenched her fists. Hong Lan's status in Mulu Pavilion was extremely noble. Coupled with her fairy-like appearance, there was no male cultivator who wasn't mesmerized by her. But only that man, the first man she had fallen in love with in her life, had saved her, treated her like air, and left her without hesitation. Saint Lady, don't be sad. Dongling saw her strange expression and quickly said, Saint Lady, with your appearance and identity, it is a great blessing for a man in the world to be liked by you. This young master Yun Xiao doesn't know your intentions and doesn't know your identity and background. If he knew, not to mention marrying into Mulu Pavilion, even if you want him to be your servant for the rest of his life, I'm sure he would be happy to do so. Honglan burst out laughing, then lowered her eyelids and softly said, if he is really willing to marry into Mulu Gu, how can I bear to let him be subservient and follow me everywhere? The man's figure appeared in front of her and she seemed to be in a trance for a moment. Greetings, Saint Lady. Seeing Honglan enter the hall, Yiyun and the others immediately knelt down respectfully. Honglan said, 5 ants, no need to be so polite. Dongling said you have something urgent to report, what is it? Yiyun took a step forward and told them what happened in Qingyi Hall today with a frown. Guqin. Honglan's eyes were a bit solemn. What kind of zither can have such power? Didn't you bring it back? The 5 of them lowered their heads in shame. Previously, they were so angry with Mayan that they just wanted this woman to be consigned to eternal damnation. In addition, the direct disciples of Cleansing Joy Pavilion usually had a musical instrument. They had been nurtured since they were young and had signed a contract with them. No matter how powerful other people's instruments were, they were of little use to them. But Honglan was different. She was the most talented musician in the history of Cleansing Joy Pavilion. Except for the Snow Solitude, she could play all the other musical instruments at will. Later on, Yiyun thought of this and wanted to snatch Mayan's zither and hand it over to Honglan. But the problem was that Mu Yen did not wait for them to catch her at all. She ran into the portal to the unclean abyss. Yiyun wanted to snatch the zither, but it was too late. Honglan shook her head and said with some regret, you said that the girl is very young, so her medical skills must have something to do with that zither. If we could get that zither, forget it, she has already gone to the unclean abyss, there's no point in saying more. Chapter 2783. The Little Thief, Qi Wen 1, although today's matter has been resolved, it has tarnished the reputation of Cleansing Joy Pavilion. You are still not good enough at music medicine, and that's why a foreign woman managed to take advantage of you. You should work harder in the future. The 5 of them were ashamed and quickly knelt down again. Yiyun even wanted to say that she was willing to go to the abyss of uncleansing to retrieve the zither. But the abyss of uncleansing was a place of no return, and the fear in her heart made her words stuck in her throat. Just as she was hesitating, an earth-shattering roar came from outside. Where did this beast come from? How dare he steal from Cleansing Joy Pavilion? Yiyun and the others who were kneeling on the ground suddenly stood up and exclaimed in unison, it's Grand Elder Xian Yuan. What happened? Anlan leaped onto the roof. Under the scorching sun, a fierce beast shrouded in black energy was confronting Xian Yuan, the Grand Elder of Cleansing Joy Pavilion. Xian Yuan raised his hand, and a bell frame flew out of his sleeve. It gradually expanded until it was the size of a half-story building. There were 3 layers of the bell frame, and each layer had 8 bronze bells. The bells on each layer were much larger than the ones on the previous layer, so they looked like towers. This set of bells was the second divine artifact of Cleansing Joy Pavilion, called the Sky Delusion Bells. Xian Yuan raised his hand, and the 8 bells in the first row made a deafening sound and flew toward the huge beast. Dong! 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 All the cultivators near the Saint Lady Temple felt their blood boil when they heard the bell ring, and their chests were so tight that they wanted to vomit. But the beast was not afraid. It raised its huge front claws and slammed them toward the incoming bells. The beast was knocked back dozens of meters, but the 8 small bells flew toward Xian Yuan and attached themselves to the bell frame. Xian Yuan's expression changed, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. What a powerful beast! Xian Yuan's eyes were bloodshot, and he was about to attack the second row of bells. Just then, a purple figure flew from the roof and stood in front of Xian Yuan. Grand Elder, let me do it. After saying that, a giant harp grew larger and larger in the air, towering in front of Military Billow. The design of this harp was not fancy, but its entire body seemed to be carved out of ice, sparkling and translucent. Under the sunlight, it emitted a sparkling radiance. It was too beautiful to behold. This was the sacred item that only the Saintess of Cleansing Joy Pavilion could play, Solitude of Ice and Snow. Seeing the appearance of Ice and Snow Solitude, the pupils of the giant beast on the opposite side shrank, and it turned around to run. Stop! Hong Lan shouted. At the same time, her fingers plucked the strings of her zither. You want to leave after stealing from my Mula Pavilion? What kind of place do you think my Cleansing Joy Pavilion is? Can you come and go as you please? As soon as he finished speaking, the melodious sound of a zither rang out at the same time. In an instant, it was as if an inescapable net of ice and snow had descended from the sky, firmly trapping the vicious beast. Immediately afterward, the upper half of the strings of Snow and Snow Solitude turned into sword light and flew toward the beast. The ferocious beast wanted to dodge, but the giant net firmly bound its movements. It revealed an anxious and manic expression, and it let out a series of roars. Its large bell-like eyes were gradually dyed red, and it seemed like it was about to explode. However, it showed a hint of hesitation, and it forcibly restrained itself. At this moment of hesitation, the strings of the Ice and Snow Solitude hit the body of the vicious beast. Roar! It let out a blood-curdling scream, and blood splattered all over its body. The black gas surrounding its body also dissipated. Then, the giant figure rapidly shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye, and shrank again and again. Chapter 2784. Little Thief, Chi Wen, too, asking for tickets. In the end, it turned into a strange spirit beast that looks like a dog but not a dog, like a dragon but not a dragon. Seeing this spirit beast, Captain Yu paused and exclaimed, "You, aren't you?" She stopped playing, and the inescapable net and zither string attack disappeared without a trace. The strange spirit beast didn't dare to stay and fled into the distance. Its grotesque face was almost distorted because of the pain. As it flew, it murmured, "What a great loss, what a great loss. This time, I came to Cleansing Le Pavilion to steal things for Master, and I almost lost my life. When I go back, I will give Master a surprise. I must make him compensate me for this loss." They're going to catch up again. Why are these bastards so persistent? Master, save me. Mei Yan, save me, Saintess, how could you let it run away? Xian Yuan rushed up in exasperation and waved behind him, "Quickly chase after it. We must not let that beast run away, we must get it back." Captain Yu listened to Elder Xian Yuan's roar, but her heart was in a mess. This was because she had recognized the beast when it had shrunk. It was the spirit beast that Luo Yunxiao had always been by her side, Qi Wen. Qi Wen was here. Did that mean that Master Yunxiao was also here? Captain Yu couldn't help but clench her fists and looked at Xian Yuan. Elder, this beast, what did it steal? Xian Yuan's face darkened. It's the holy stone. What? At this time, Captain Yu couldn't care less about her shyness and expectation. It's really the holy stone. Xian Yuan nodded and said eagerly, I will order a blockade of the entire northern continent and personally hunt it down. We must not let this beast escape. Captain Yu took a deep breath. Elder, why don't I be in charge of the pursuit? Xian Yuan was startled. You'll be in charge. The saintess was the supreme existence of cleansing Le Pavilion. Although the holy stone was important, it really wasn't enough for the saintess to personally hunt it down. Captain Yu nodded heavily. Rest assured, Elder, no matter what, I will bring the holy stone back. After stepping into the portal of light, Mayan only feels that her head is heavy and her feet light. When the dizziness disappeared, a putrid stench immediately assaulted his nostrils. Mu Yan frowns, holds back her sense of smell, and opens her eyes. However, upon taking a closer look, she discovered that this place was filled with black fog. She couldn't even see her fingers in front of her. Even though she gathered her spiritual energy in her eyes, she couldn't see anything. Hey! Hey! Save me, save me. Give me something to eat, I beg you. Suddenly, a cold and slippery hand grabbed her ankle, and a hoarse voice that sounded like the wailing of a malicious spirit rang out. Even though she's wearing shoes and socks, Mu Yan feels as if there's some kind of sticky, rancid liquid eroding her skin bit by bit. Mayan raises her hand and an illuminating crystal appears in her hand. She squatted down, only to find that it was a bony, blood-stained hand that was grabbing her ankle. The illumination crystal was pushed forward a little, and the next thing that came into view was a face that was scarier than a malicious ghost. The flesh and blood of this person's whole body seemed to have been sucked dry, leaving only a thin layer of skin attached to the skeleton. But it was that layer of skin that had been corroded and gnawed by something, becoming riddled with holes. Only one of the wide-open eyes still had a body, while the other had long become a hole, and there was an unknown worm slowly crawling in and out. In August, a new beginning. Those who have guaranteed monthly votes, please take a look. In order to thank everyone for their monthly votes, Azzy will strive to increase monthly votes from time to time, and pray that there will be enough monthly votes this month to successfully climb up the goddess list. Suddenly, I'm very jealous of Mayan, the person who slaughters the list. Chapter 2785. Piles of the Living Dead. 1. Even though Mayan is used to seeing big scenes, she can't help but feel her scalp tingle when she sees this person. Save me. I beg you, save me. As he cries, black tears flow out of one of his eyes, while blood tears come out of the other as the bug rushes out. The scene becomes more and more gloomy and terrifying. Mayan takes out an elixir and feeds it to him. She grabs his hand and is about to feel his pulse. Suddenly, she hears a low, hoarse voice from her side. Don't do anything stupid. If you want to save someone, it won't be enough to save this one. The rest of them will swallow you alive. Mayan stares blankly, following the voice. However, there's a thick black fog here, and the illumination crystal can't illuminate very far. She can't see who's speaking at all. Just then, a flame suddenly flies up from the ground, and then explodes in the air. This time, it's like sunlight piercing through the clouds and dispersing the thick fog. In a split second, the surrounding scene is completely illuminated. Hiss! Seeing the scene in front of her, Mayan suddenly sucks in a mouthful of cold air. She doesn't even have time to observe the place in front of her. All she can see are densely packed living corpses, similar to the ones grabbing her ankles. Yes, in Mayan's view, these people who don't look like humans or ghosts can only be called living corpses. They don't even have consciousness anymore. They only know how to instinctively squirm their bodies, making low, strange sounds. But when the flame lights up, the living corpses lying on the ground suddenly jump up, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws, letting out ghostly wails and wolf-like howls. In an instant, this gloomy place seems to have turned into a hellish azure field where evil spirits roam. Do you see? These people have already lost their minds, and only have a trace of survival instinct left. If you take out the elixir and let them feel the pure spiritual power, they will recklessly snatch it. If you use spiritual power to treat people, they will smell the spiritual power on your body, and they will rush over to bite off pieces of your flesh. The flame in the sky slowly dissipates, and the surroundings return to darkness. It was a thin middle-aged man with sunken eyes, messy hair, and a face full of stubble. It was obvious that he did not have a good time here, but compared to those living corpses, he still retained a bit of consciousness. Mayan pulls down the hands that are grabbing her ankle. She doesn't use spiritual power, only internal force, and the two hands that are baring their fangs and brandishing their claws are twisted together. Then, like dragging a sack, he dragged it to the front of the middle-aged man. "May I know who you are?" The middle-aged man let out a bitter laugh and said, "In this unclean abyss, sooner or later, we will become living corpses like them. What's the point of not reporting our names?" The illumination crystal shines in front of the two people, and Mu Yen can see the despair on the middle-aged man's face. The middle-aged man also inadvertently looked over. Who knew that with this glance, his eyes would suddenly widen, revealing a trace of astonishment. "Little girl, what's your name?" Mu Yen raises her eyebrows. "Before asking someone else's name, why don't you first introduce yourself?" The middle-aged man stared blankly for a long time before saying, "I am Wen Huanglang. Surnamed Wen." Mu Yan's mind unconsciously thinks of the shopkeeper of the Listening Sound Pavilion, Wen Qingyuan. "Little girl, can you tell me your name?" Mu Yan thinks for a moment, then says, "June Mu Yan." "Your surname is June." When Huanglang's voice almost suddenly rises, and that originally lifeless face suddenly becomes very lively. Chapter 2786. Pile of the Living Dead, 2, Mu Yen, what's wrong? Is there a problem with the surname June? When Huanglang shakes his head again and again, No, girl, can you tell me who your parents are? Mu Yen slightly narrows her eyes, looking at Wen Huanglang. Her intuition tells her that this person should be related to the clues she's looking for about her parents. But before she could ask, the living corpse that she's grabbing by both hands suddenly lets out a mournful howl, its whole body trembling violently. Mu Yen flips her wrist, and the Tian Mo Qin appears in her palm. Prison drawing activates. An invisible barrier envelopes the living corpse that's baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. But because she's using spiritual power, all the living corpses in the entire call are howling, using their hands and feet to crawl towards her. "Damn it!" When Huanglang growls, "Are you crazy? Didn't I tell you not to use spiritual power?" Mu Yen doesn't pay attention to him. Instead, she quickly plucks the strings in her hands. The range of control of prison drawing is getting bigger and bigger, bigger and bigger. In the end, it actually shrouds all the hundreds of living corpses in the Colonel Mu Yan's figure floats in the air, her fingers lightly and slowly twirling, changing the tune of the tune. The Tian Mo Qin emits a faint light, illuminating the entire kernel when Huanglang blankly looks up at this scene, his eyes filled with shock and disbelief. The next moment, he suddenly widens his eyes. He sees that in the bloody and rotten hell-like unclean abyss, the girl's clothes are as white as snow, untainted by even a speck of dust. Then, the figure and the zither slowly split into two, standing opposite each other, their movements the same, but they're playing a completely different tune. Heavy Phantom activates. The Mu Yen on the left continues to maintain Prison Drawing, while the Mu Yen on the right changes the tune, launching Arts Essence Yellow instead. Strands of silvery energy overflow from the Tian Emo Chin on the right, shooting towards the living corpse that's grabbing Mu Yen and begging for help. Launching 3 Shin musician skills at the same time like this is also a huge burden for Mu Yen. Fine beads of sweat ooze from her forehead, and her sweaty hair sticks to her face, but she doesn't have the leisure to comb it. The activation of the 3 skills lasted for half an hour. As for Wen Huanglang, he could only watch in disbelief as the emaciated living corpse slowly regained its flesh and blood. It slowly recovered a trace of spirit power, and the only eye that was still intact slowly emitted a glimmer of vitality. I'm saved. The zombie touched his face desperately and kept stomping on the ground with his feet, feeling the feeling of standing up again and being reborn as a human. Tears finally flowed uncontrollably from her eyes. He survived. Did he really survive? How? How did he survive? The zombie abruptly raised his head and looked at the girl in the air as if he was looking at a god descending from the sky. He had almost lost his previous consciousness. He only instinctively remembered that he didn't want to die, so he grabbed onto something and desperately called for help. However, even he himself did not believe that he, who had been sent into the unclean abyss and turned into a living corpse, could possibly survive. Roar! Ah! The young man didn't have time to rejoice in his survival when suddenly there was a roar. Countless living corpses opened their bloody mouths and madly pounced on him. Clang! The sound of the zither hummed, and hundreds of sound blades fell from the sky, brushing past the foremost zombie and shooting into the ground. Chapter 2787. Making the walking corpses obedient, 1, stirring up a disgusting rancid smell. But the crawling motion of the walking corpses was obstructed for a moment. Not waiting for them to continue crawling towards the youth and bite him. In the sky, the melodious sound of the zither, accompanied by the girl's sonorous and forceful words, spread to every corner of the mountain. I know that you all still have a trace of consciousness. Since you are walking corpses, that means that there is still a chance of survival in your bodies. I can save this person, and I can also save you. Now, I will give you 2 choices. Either, obediently lie down on the ground, don't make any noise, don't raise your head, and wait for me to treat you one by one. Or, you bite me with your instincts, and I will help you free yourself from my zither blade, and turn you into real corpses. Mayan slowly lowered her eyes, sweeping over the densely packed walking corpses with bloody fangs bared. The corners of her mouth slowly hooked up into a disdainful arc. There is only one chance. Now, I will count to 3, and you can choose for yourselves. 1, 2, swish, 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 swish. The corpses on the ground lowered their heads in unison. Their faces and fangs, which were even scarier than ghosts, were all hidden in the rotten soil. In just a few short breaths, the horrifying scene of violent corpses from just a moment ago, it has turned into a strange scene of crying patients waiting for treatment, obediently lying down and sleeping, waiting for their turn. When Huanglang looked at this scene, both shocked and amused. He felt that all the knowledge he had in this life had been subverted by this girl. The people sent into the unclean abyss either suffered from an incurable disease, or they had committed a heinous crime. These 2 kinds of people were usually sent into the unclean abyss with different strengths. More often than not, people who had committed heinous crimes were unwilling to resign themselves to death. However, after these 2 kinds of people entered the unclean abyss, the final outcome was almost exactly the same. Because there was demonic energy lurking beneath the unclean abyss, and there were hundreds of poisonous gases in the air. These poisonous gases intertwined over the years, and coupled with the erosion of demonic energy, it eventually became a strange poison that no modification could resist. The people of the Horton tribe called this strange poison, God-punishing shaman. Anyone who entered the unclean abyss would be tainted by the God-slaying witch. As long as a person was contaminated by the God-killing witch, the spiritual power in his body would gradually collapse in less than 2 hours. When all the spiritual energy in the body dissipated, they would be tortured in pain and become a horrifying living corpse. Moreover, there was no replenishment of spiritual power in the unclean abyss. Once he used his spiritual energy, it would be equivalent to the spiritual energy in his body dispersing prematurely, and he would become a living corpse in advance. This is also the reason why Wen Huanglang was so furious when he saw Mu Yan using her spiritual power. He thought to himself, a little girl from the outside will always be a little girl. She doesn't know how terrifying it is to use and exhaust spiritual energy in the unclean abyss. Later, when the spiritual power in her body is exhausted, she will fall from the sky and become food for the living corpses. Wen Huanglang thought this way, but he did not feel any pain in his heart, only a little regret. After all, even he himself did not know how much longer he could live. It was a pity that he couldn't ask the little girl about her background. After all, that girl's appearance was so. However, a quarter of an hour passed. Mu Yan was playing the Tian Mo Qin, overflowing with vigorous energy that even Wen Huanglang could feel. An hour passed, and Mu Yan was still playing the Tian Mo Qin. Chapter 2788. Making the zombie obedient, too, asking for votes. The most unbelievable thing for Wen Huanglang was that the zombie was brought back to life. Before Wen Huanglang was thrown into the unclean abyss, he had lived in the northern continent of Ziyunjia for many years. How could he not know that a zombie hit by the God-slaying shaman could still be restored to a normal person? Then, just when Wen Huanglang thought that he had received enough shock, the little girl began to order all the zombies in the kernel. Those were zombies that had already lost their minds, and only had the desire to survive and instincts left. How could they be obedient? As a result, the result was, of course, that he was ruthlessly slapped in the face again. In this call that was even more terrible than the infernal realm. From noon to night, from night to day, the melodious and pleasant sound of the zither echoed. The sky of the unclean abyss was shrouded in thick fog all year round. Even if the sun was already high in the sky, it still couldn't shine through this thick fog. Only the occasional gust of wind would disperse the thick fog for a while. Looking up, a trace of sunlight shining down from the sky could be clearly seen. But this kind of light only lasted for a moment, and it would immediately be shrouded in pure death energy and darkness again. Living in such an environment for a long time, even a person with a strong mind would go crazy. However, the scene in the valley of the unclean abyss at this time made Wen Huanglang wonder if he was in the wrong place. Is this really the unclean abyss? Hey, what are you guys doing? The immortal hates the stench the most. Hurry up and clean up the piles of bones there. Hey, which one of you is throwing broken bones? Don't you know that broken bones are very sharp? What if you scratch the immortal? Immortal, come, sit here. This stone is the cleanest. There's nothing in this unclean abyss, and most of the food is inedible. But this vermilion jade fruit is the only thing that can replenish spiritual power. Can you condescend to try it? Mayan sat on the rock that had been polished until it was shiny. She reached out to take the vermilion jade fruit, and tasted it, saying, "It tastes good, thank you." No, immortal, you saved our lives, we should thank you. How can we deserve your thanks? Mayan touches her nose. Excuse me, can you not call me Fairy Darren? My surname is June. You can call me Miss June, Miss June. Or God June, don't call her Lady Fairy, it sounds scary. But to us, you're a fairy who comes to our rescue. How can we express our gratitude if we only call him Great God June? Yes, yes, you are sent by the heavens to save us. To me, you are the true saintess. Even the saintess was here. Mu Yen shivered as goosebumps appeared all over her body. Stop, stop, I'm just a doctor, not some immortal, not even a saintess. Moreover, I've only temporarily suppressed the poison in your bodies. It's still a long way to go before I can truly eradicate it. Really, in Yenmu continent, those people might as well call her Enchantress of Medicine. At the very least, he had admitted that she was a physician. What the hell were fairies and saintesses? If you really want to thank me, then answer a few questions of mine. Everyone nodded. Please ask, Great Immortal. How big is the unclean abyss? Are all the people who were sent here? The one who answered Mayan was the first youth she saved. His name is Shuabing, and he's now blind in one eye. But it can be seen that he used to be a healthy and sunny youth. Shouting for tickets, guaranteed monthly tickets, sob sob sob, I feel like I can't live without tickets. Chapter 2789. My mother's surname is Ning. 1. Shuabing, replying to Great Immortal, it's not. This is only a corner of the unclean abyss. The unclean abyss is very big, and there are many blasphemers who have been thrown in. But in fact, most of them are already skeletons. Only a few with profound cultivation, or those who have just been thrown in, might still be alive. Mu Yen frowns. She knows the strength of her fellow apprentices. They have just been sent in not long ago, so their lives won't be in danger for the time being. Mu Yan is about to ask how she can find other people who have been sent into the unclean abyss. She saw Wen Huanglang stumbling towards her. Who exactly are you? The veil on Mu Yan's face has already fallen off when she was struggling with the living corpses. At this time, the whole call is filled with illuminating crystals. So the line of sight is still dim, but the girl's beautiful face can be seen clearly. When Huanglang murmurs, I see that your cultivation is only at the nascent soul stage. If you keep using your spiritual power, you won't be able to last for 2 hours at most. How do you do it, in the unclean abyss where you can't absorb spiritual power, to be able to use it continuously? This question makes Mu Yen stare blankly. Spiritual power can't be used in the unclean abyss. But why didn't she feel this obstruction at all? In places where spiritual power is isolated, such as Fusang cities, 100 flowers kill, she really can't use her spiritual power. This shows that her spiritual power can't be created out of nothing. But in this unclean abyss, she very naturally tries to absorb spiritual power to replenish it, and even more naturally, replenish it successfully. Mu Yen can't help but run her dantian. The next moment, she really feels a pure spiritual power pouring into her body. It was unimpeded, no different from before. No, wait. There's still something different. In the outside world, the spiritual power she absorbed came from all directions. But in this unclean abyss, spiritual power seems to come from the soles of her feet. Why is this? Is there spiritual power hidden under the unclean abyss? But if there really is spiritual power underground, why can't others absorb it, but she can? Just as he was feeling puzzled, when Huanglang suddenly said, the unclean abyss has existed for tens of thousands of years, but no one has ever been able to leave it alive. That's what the Horton tribe and Cleansing Joy Pavilion think, but they don't know that 20 years ago, someone walked out of here unscathed. Mu Yan's heart jumped. Who is this person you're talking about? When Huanglang's gaze falls on Mu Yan, but he doesn't answer the question, Miss June, you said before that your surname is June. Could you please tell me the names of your father and mother? Mu Yan ponders for a long time, then slowly says, I don't know who my mother is. I only know that my father is called Jun Shiyuan. Ah! When Huang Lang cried out in alarm. He couldn't bear it any longer. He grabbed Mayan's arm, and his eyes reddened. You're Mr. June. Are you really Mr. June? When Huang Lang's entire person seems to be bewitched, crying and laughing at the same time, when I saw your face, I was already suspicious. Your appearance combines all of Mr. June's and Miss Ning's strengths. Your brows and eyes are 50 to 60% similar to Miss Ning's, but your expression and bearing are indescribably similar to Mr. June. Mu Yan's heart jumped again. Miss Ning. Is that her mother? Her mother's surname is Ning. What does she have to do with the Ning family of the northern lands of Ziyunjie? Chapter 2790. My mother's surname is Ning. 2. When Huang Lang came back to his senses and wiped the tears from the corner of his eyes. I'm sorry, I lost my composure. I just didn't expect that after 20 years, would never be able to hear any news about Mr. June. But how fortunate am I to be able to see you again before I die. As he spoke, he bent his knees and knelt down. Miss June, please accept my warm bow. Mu Yan didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she helped him up. If you want to kneel to me, at least wait until I dispel the god-killing witch in your body. Saying that, she turns her wrist, and the Tian Mo Chin appears. The melodious sound of the zither resounds. After a quarter of an hour, when Huang Lang's originally haggard and emaciated appearance returned to normal. When Huang Lang did not care whether the poison in his body had been detoxified or whether his body had recovered. He only stares fervently at Mayan, his expression excited and worshipping. Miss, you really are worthy of being Mr. June's daughter. He was so young, yet he already had such a cultivation base. Also, your medical skills are even better than Miss Ning's, than your mother's. You really are a combination of the strengths of these two people. If Mr. June knew that he had a daughter like you, he would be so happy. Mu Yan's face is going to turn red from his blowing. Obviously, this Wen Huang Lang was her father Jun Shiyuan's diehard fan. As long as it was related to his father, he would boast about it to the heavens. But Mu Yan looks at Wen Huang Lang's clear and bright face, and suddenly feels a little familiar. Then, he suddenly remembered something. How is Wen Qingyuan of the Listening Sound Pavilion related to you? The sky was bright and high, the mountains were clear and distant, and the sun was setting. His surname was also Wen. Why didn't she think of the relationship between these two before? When Huang Lang was taken aback. After a while, he said, he is my younger brother. Mu Yan was puzzled. He's the shopkeeper of the Listening Sound Pavilion. Logically speaking, he holds great power in the northern continent. Why were you sent to the unclean abyss? When Huang Lang smiled bitterly. Because he was the one who sent me into the unclean abyss. Mu Yan raises her eyebrows. Let's start from 20 years ago. Our Wen family has been the servants of the Ning family for generations. At that time, my younger brother Wen Qingyuan and I followed the young master of the Ning family, Ning Jinqiu. He is a dictator who looks gentle and refined on the surface, but is actually cruel and merciless, and has a strong desire for control. As long as it is an order issued by Ning Jinqiu, Qingyuan and I must complete it to the letter. Otherwise, it will be a severe punishment. But 20 years ago, when Qingyuan made a fatal mistake in the process of carrying out a mission. When Huang Lang's voice paused and became slightly hoarse. He was terrified. He knelt in front of me and begged me to save him. I only have this younger brother, so when Ning Jinqiu pursued the blame, I took all the responsibility on myself. Ning Jinqiu was furious and directly threw me into the unclean abyss. It was here that I met Mr. Jun when Huang Lang's expression, which was bitter and indignant just a moment ago, instantly turned into the worship of a diehard fan. Mr. Jun was just like you back then. The god-punishing witch poison of the unclean abyss had no effect on him, and the spiritual power in his body was inexhaustible. I was so lucky to enter the unclean abyss, a place of certain death, twice, but once I met Mr. Jun, and the other time I met you. Stop. Mu Yan hurriedly stopped when Huang Lang's flattery. Jun Shiyuan, cough, my father, why did he appear in the unclean abyss? Chapter 2791. My mother's surname is Ning. 3. Hearing this, when Huang Lang's face seemed to twitch. After a long while, he coughed lightly and said, Mr. Jun said that he met a girl he likes, and it's especially hard to pursue her. He chased her all the way until he reached the boundary of the northern continent. However, he was blocked outside, so he found another way to sneak in from the unclean abyss. The corner of Mu Yan's mouth twitches. When Huang Lang probably felt that this paragraph was damaging to his idol's image, so he hurriedly skipped over it. I happen to know a little about the woman that Mr. Jun mentioned, so I promised him that as long as he takes me out of the unclean abyss, I will help him find the whereabouts of that woman. Mu Yan's heart thumped, and she blurted out, my mother, who is she? When Huang Lang hesitated for a while before saying, I only know that your mother isn't a real member of the Ning family. But the entire Ning family, from the head of the family to the servants, all treat her with incomparable respect, even awe. Ning Jinqiu is such a lecherous and arrogant person, but in front of Miss Ning, he is as humble as a dog. At that time, I guessed that Miss Ning's identity was not simple. She might not even be someone from the cultivation continent. So, although I have great respect for Mr. Jun, as for him wanting to pursue Miss Ning, I can only treat it as, wishful thinking. When Huang Lang paused again and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Who would have thought that a year later, Mr. Jun would actually appear before me with Miss Ning? At that time, the two of them had already become husband and wife and loved each other very much. Moreover, Miss Ning's stomach is pregnant. Mu Yan's pupils slightly contract. Before today, she actually didn't have any deep feelings for her biological parents that she couldn't bear to part with. They were like two symbols that were connected to his bloodline, but had never participated in his life at all. Mu Yan had always thought that she would always be light and carefree. But at this moment, when she heard Wen Huanglang's description, an indescribable wave surged in her heart. Those were her parents. In order to give birth to her, did she also bear the pain of being pregnant for 10 months and giving birth overnight? Did he once look forward to her coming into the world? Mayim presses down the billowing waves at the bottom of her heart, and softly says, and then? Why? Why did they abandon him? Why would she be left all alone in the Yanwu continent? When Huang Lang covered his face with his hands. His voice was hoarse and filled with pain. Afterwards, it was all my fault. I was the one who harmed Mr. Jun and you. After coming out of the unclean abyss, I've been hiding in the northern land, afraid that Ning Jinqiu would find out that I'm not dead. Wen Qingyuan is the only one who knows that I came out of the unclean abyss alive. He even knows about the existence of Mr. Jun and Miss Ning. Mr. Jun once guided him in his swordsmanship. There was even a time when he was seriously injured, and it was Miss Ning who healed him. I thought he would be extremely grateful to Mr. Jun and Miss Ning. But Wen Qingyuan, the beast, returned kindness with ingratitude. When Miss Ning was about to give birth, he reported their whereabouts to Ning Jinqiu. Mayan frowns. Why report it to Ning Jinqiu? Wen Huanglang shook his head. I don't know the exact reason. I only know that at that time, the Ning family mobilized everyone. Even Mula Pavilion and the Horton tribe were mobilized to search for Miss Ning's whereabouts. When Qing Yuan vaguely revealed that there was an extremely powerful person pressuring the entire northern land. If Miss Ning wasn't found, then everyone would be buried with her. Chapter 2792. My mother's surname is Ning. 4. Asking for votes, when Huanglang felt as if the scene from 20 years ago appeared in front of him again. In the pitch-black night, countless densely packed flames surrounded his small courtyard. Ning Yanxin, who had just given birth, looked pale and wobbly. She forced her weak body to draw a teleportation array. However, she put the baby in Jun Shiyuan's arms and drove Jun Shiyuan and Wen Huanglang into the teleportation array. Then, she retreated step by step. Jun Shiyuan, protect our child. Jun Shiyuan didn't want to leave. He handed the baby to Wen Huanglang and cut the teleportation array with his sword. He looked at Ning Yanxin stubbornly, telling her with his actions that if they were going to leave, they were going to leave together. Ning Yanxin didn't react at all. She just quietly finished drawing the teleportation array. The loss of her spiritual power made her lips pale. She looked like an ice cube that could crack and melt at any time. Jun Shiyuan's eyes were red. He destroyed the teleportation array again, and Ning Yanxin fixed it again. After 3 times, blood dripped from the corner of Ning Yanxin's mouth. Jun Shiyuan was like a wounded and crazy beast. He rushed over and hugged her tightly. Ning Yanxin, what do you want? Ning Yanxin pushed him away. She was as cold as ice and as hard as stone. She said word by word, Jun Shiyuan, do you remember what I said when I agreed to be with you? If I say it starts, it starts. If I say it ends, it ends. Once it ends, you and I will be strangers and never see each other again. Now, let me tell you, it's over between us. She glanced at the flickering flames outside the window and slowly said, the fate between you and me has been exhausted. From now on, you can be your ranger, and I'll be the eldest daughter of the Ning family. We'll never meet again. Then, Ning Yanxin pushed the door open and left without hesitation. The teleportation array lit up and wrapped Jun Shiyuan, Wen Huanglang, and the baby in his arms. That was the first time when Huanglang saw the arrogant and narcissistic Mr. Jun show such an expression. Ferocious, tyrannical, crazy, yet he was covered in tears like a ferocious beast that had lost everything. His sorrow and despair caused others to feel heartache as well. However, after when Huanglang and Jun Shiyuan were teleported to an unfamiliar valley, they did not escape from danger. The people of the Ning family quickly caught up. When Huanglang didn't even have time to see who the leader was before he was hit by a sword chi and fell off the cliff. The person who saved me was a villager from Yuanwu village. After I recovered from my injuries, I tried to find out more about Mr. Jun. However, it was as if he and Miss Ning had vanished from the face of the earth. Furthermore, whether it was the Ning family, Mula Pavilion or the Horton tribe, no one knew of their existence. In other words, no one dares to mention their existence. When Huanglang looks up at Mayan, he saw that she was in a daze, as if she was in a daze. She hurriedly said, Miss Jun, I'm too useless. I can't help Mr. Jun. I can't even find out the truth. However, I have personally witnessed Mr. Jun and Miss Ning's interaction. 10 months of pregnancy, little by little, they must have loved you very much in their hearts. Miss Ning is such a proud and indifferent person, yet she would caress her bulging belly and reveal a gentle smile. Before you were born, Mr. Jun had already prepared several boxes of men's and women's clothing. You wouldn't be able to imagine that he personally sewed these clothes. Don't think that I'm annoying. Even if you do, I still have to ask for a vote. Who let that be the foundation of our survival? AI. Chapter 2793. I believe that they must have been forced to abandon you. Mayan listens in a daze. She doesn't know why, but she feels an indescribable sourness in her eyes and heart. It takes a long time for her to calm down. Why did you enter the unclean abyss again? When Huanglang shows a bitter smile and grits his teeth, all these years, I've been living in Yuanwu village except for gathering information. The Ning family and Wen Qingyuan thought that I had died long ago. A few days ago, I went to Wangyin Bazaar to gather information and found that Wen Qingyuan had become the shopkeeper of Listening Sound Pavilion. We had a fierce dispute in Listening Sound Pavilion. Although I hated him for betraying Mr. Jun, he was still my only blood relative in this world. Being able to see him again, my heart still held a trace of happiness. But who knew that he would be so cruel and merciless? When Huanglang's face shows a look of resentment and pain, and even his voice can't help but tremble. He was afraid that I would report him to Ning Jinqiu, and that I would settle accounts with him about Mr. Jun. He sent people to follow me to Yuanwu village, and then threw me and all the people in Yuanwu village into the unclean abyss. Mayan stares blankly and turns to look at Zhuo Bing and the others. These people's cultivation is obviously very low, and they have just experienced a hellish life and death situation. There is still fear in their eyes. But there is even more joy and gratitude after surviving a disaster. You guessed right, they are the villagers who survived in Yuanwu village. When Huanglang chokes with sobs, their cultivation is very low, and they are not smart. They are the lowest existences in the entire northern continent of Xinjia. But in the midst of a bunch of deceitful, heartless high-level cultivators, they were so simple and kind. Wen Qingyuan, that bastard, even refused to let these villagers go. No, it's not Wen Qingyuan's fault, it's me. I implicated them. If Miss June hadn't happened to appear here, I would have killed them and myself because of my soft-heartedness. Mayan sees Wen Huanglang covering his face and silently sobbing, but she has no intention of comforting him. When Wen Huanglang has cried enough, she asks, "Does anyone in the northern continent know the whereabouts of my parents?" Wen Huanglang sniffles and silently wipes his tears. He thinks for a moment and says, "Ning Jinqiu should know." Mayan nods, her eyes deep. Then, she stood up from the rock and walked towards the direction of the thick fog. "Miss June, where are you going? Fairy maiden, don't abandon us." Seeing that Mu Yen was about to leave, when Huanglang and the villagers of Yuanwu village chased after her. "Mu Yen, I have already removed most of the god-slaying shamans in this kernel. In a short time, you will not be infected by the poison again. I'm going to other places in the unclean abyss to look for my senior and junior brothers. It'll be dangerous for you to follow me." When the villagers of Yuanwu village heard this, they immediately revealed disappointed expressions. All of them stared at her like some kind of pitiful stupid beast. Mu Yan held her forehead. "You guys wait here obediently. When I find my fellow apprentices, I promise to take you out of the unclean abyss. Great Immortal, will you come back for us? Can we really leave the unclean abyss?" The eyes of the villagers of Yuanwu village lit up again, as if they had seen a beast on a bone. Pairs of eyes, pika pika pika, seemed to be emitting stars. Mu Yan can't stand it anymore, so she turns around to leave. When Huanglang hurriedly caught up with him and smiled. Chapter 2794. When Huanglang hurriedly chased after her and said with a smile, "Miss June, this is my second time entering the unclean abyss, so I'm very familiar with this place. If you let me take you there, it might be easier." This time, Mu Yan doesn't refuse. The 7 absolute swords in his palm turned into flying swords. Mu Yan grabs Wen Huanglang's collar and steps onto the flying sword. The unclean abyss was filled with bumpy, scorched earth and mountains. The flying sword was shrouded in a dense, pitch-black mist. One could well imagine how dangerous it was. When Huang Lang was scared out of his wits every time the tip of the sword collided with a mountain peak or the edge of the sword brushed past a boulder. His hairstyle, which had been tidied up after the detoxification, was now blown into a bird's nest. When Huang Lang wiped his face, he could feel snot and tears on his hand. He then touched his crotch. Fortunately, he had not peed his pants yet. He had more or less saved his face. When Huang Lang recalled his encounter with Mr. Jun in the unclean abyss 20 years ago, he seemed to have also experienced such a thrilling experience. For a moment, the cold wind blew, the thick fog blew, and the rotten smell filled the air. He couldn't help but feel sorrowful. "All right, don't cry." Mu Yan listened to the sobbing voice of the uncle next to her, and she really couldn't help it. "Didn't I tell you not to follow?" She also knew that flying a sword in the unclean abyss was fraught with danger. But wasn't she impatient? Uncle Wen rubbed his nose and said in a muffled voice against the wind, "You said it was Wen Qingyuan who told you about your brother in the unclean abyss. I'm afraid that bastard is lying to you. Wen Qingyuan has also spent a lot of time with Mr. Jun and Miss Ning. Others may not be able to tell at a glance how special your appearance is, but as long as they are familiar with their looks, they will realize that your appearance is the perfect combination of their strengths." Mu Yan lowers her eyes. She had thought of this long ago. Back at the listening sound pavilion, when Qin Yuan's expression when he saw her was one of extreme shock, suspicion, and a hint of wariness and fear that he tried his best to hide. "When Qin Yuan might not have recognized my identity," Mu Yan slowly said, "but he definitely wants to kill me. That's why he told me that my senior and junior brothers had been sent to the unclean abyss. But you didn't tell me that the unclean abyss is a place of no return. But I believe that my senior and junior brothers are indeed in the unclean abyss." This was an inexplicable intuition. Especially after entering the unclean abyss, her intuition had become even more intense. When Huang Lang sniffed and was about to speak, suddenly, Mayan puts a hand to her lips. "Be quiet, there's someone down there. Junior sister." Ling Yuxing could not believe his eyes when he saw the figure slowly emerging from the thick fog. "Why are you here?" "No, wait, could it be that I'm hallucinating like second senior brother and the others?" Mayan took 2 or 3 steps forward and hugged Ling Yuxing. She abruptly tightened her grip. "Fifth senior brother, are you all right?" As she speaks, Mayan discovers that her voice is hoarse and trembling. From the Snow Spirit Forest to the Wangyin Bazaar to the unclean abyss, she had been very calm. But only the heavens knew how worried she was for her fellow disciples. The tip of his nose smells Mayan's unique scent, and the absent-mindedness in Ling Yuxing's eyes slowly fades away. "Junior sister, is it really you? What are you doing here? Did you come to look for us?" Mayan lets go of Ling Yuxing, but grasps his pulse to check. Sure enough, Ling Yuxing has been poisoned by the God-punishing witch, but fortunately, the poison is very light. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.